Chapter 780. Noble Consort Lu shuddered and snapped. What nonsense are you talking about? I don't know you. Hurry up and leave. Princess Zhenning closed her eyes and said in a low voice, Don't you feel guilty at all? I don't know what you're talking about. Noble Consort Lu forced herself to be calm and waved to call the guards outside. Come, drive them out and don't let them in again. You. Princess Zhenning stood up abruptly, but was stopped by Mo Xiaoyan. Mo Xiaoyan stopped Princess Zhenning, who was about to pounce on them, and said in a low voice, Sister, let's go back first. Princess Zhenning was dragged out by Mo Xiaoyan, but her eyes were fixed on Noble Consort Lu. She stared fiercely at her. When Mo Xiaoyan and Princess Zhenning disappeared at the door, Noble Consort Lu seemed to have disappeared and fell into the chair weakly. Princess Ronghua leisurely looked at her and smiled faintly. Why are you so heartless? Even if you have 2 children, the royal family of the northern tribes doesn't care. The northern tribes are not as well behaved as us. Besides, with your age, do you want people to believe that you're a virgin? Ronghua. Noble Consort Lu glared at her fiercely. Princess Ronghua stood up and smiled indifferently. Since Prince Chongqing and Princess Zhenning mistook me for someone else, I'll take my leave. My future 7th sister-in-law. But will my 7th brother really marry you? Noble Consort Lu's expression became even more sinister when she heard Princess Ronghua leave the hall with laughter. Her hands hidden in her sleeves were clenched tightly, and her long nails dug into her palms. But she didn't feel it. Why should she feel guilty? Everything she did was for the sake of living well, for the sake of revenge. Who knew how much she had suffered? Compared to the suffering she had before she met Ye Luyi, what were they? What was there to feel guilty about? Others only thought that Ye Luyi was infatuated with her beauty, and was infatuated with her. But if Ye Luyi was really infatuated with her, why didn't he marry her for so long? But it didn't matter. As long as Ye Luyi still needed her, she could manipulate the northern tribes. She would definitely make Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li pay the price. In the blink of an eye, it was Mr. Qingyun's birthday. The entire glass city was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was even livelier than the new year. In recent years, with the effective governance of the Prince Ding Mansion in the northwest, the influence of the Su family and Lishan Academy in the northwest had gradually increased. There were countless people in the northwest who had given Su Qingxin and the others favors. What's more, Mr. Qingyun was Princess Ding's grandfather. On his birthday, the people of Glass City naturally celebrated more than any other festival. In the past few years, as Glass City gradually expanded, Glass City imitated Nanjiao Royal City and built a large plaza not far from the Prince Ding Mansion. Behind the plaza was a tall and majestic observation deck. Every festival, the citizens of Glass City would gather here to celebrate. It was the first time that a banquet was held here. But because of this, the commoners were able to enjoy the banquet at a closer distance. Although this was a great test in terms of security, the shadow guards of the Prince Ding Mansion were not afraid of this. When the lanterns were lit, the entire square was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Countless beautiful fireworks bloomed in the sky. The people in the square cheered. The citizens of the city all walked out of their homes and gathered in the square to enjoy the rare and beautiful fireworks. On the observation deck, there were several banquets that could accommodate thousands of people. When this place was built, it was originally designed to hold large banquets. After all, the Prince Ding Mansion was not large and Glass City was not suitable to be a true capital city. If they built a temporary palace here, it would be a waste of money and manpower. Building this plaza and observation deck would not only allow the commoners to play here, but also allow them to gather during festivals. At the same time, it also solved the problem of the Prince Ding Mansion not being able to hold large banquets. After all, they couldn't hold banquets on the city gate tower every time, right? The 2 sides of the observation deck were concave forward, forming a semicircle. No matter which corner one sat in, one could see the whole picture of the entire square. It was like a 3-level staircase, allowing all the guests to see the host at the top. This was originally something that Yi Li had mentioned, but in the end, it was Su Hongyan who completed it himself. In the past 2 years, Many of the Prince Ding Mansion's banquets were held here. It could be considered as sharing the joy with the people. At the top of the building, there was a large golden longevity character on a red background. If one looked closely, they would find that this longevity character was made up of countless small longevity characters of different shapes. The characters were elegant and graceful, but it was young Master Qing Chen's handwriting. Tonight, the person sitting at the top was no longer Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li, but the white-haired young Master Qing Yin. Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao sat to his right. Below him sat Su Hongyu, Su Hongyan, and the other young masters of the Su family. Below them were the influential guests from various countries, and the civil and military officials of the Prince Ding Mansion. With such an arrangement, how could the people present not see the Su family's status in the Prince Ding Mansion? When the banquet started, Yi Li and Su Qingyin helped young Master Qing Yin to his seat. Then, they walked to Mo Xiuyao's side and sat down. After all the guests were seated, there was an empty space in the plaza below. Hundreds of women in colorful clothes held colorful lanterns and danced to the melodious music. Such a grand scene was naturally much more magnificent than the banquets that people were used to in the palace. Many of the people gathered here to watch the fireworks also had a feast for their eyes. Mo Xiaobao sat between Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao. He also curiously looked at the grand scene in front of him. Although he was the young heir of the Prince Ding Mansion, Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li had never hidden him at home. He had seen all kinds of people, but it was the first time for such an unprecedented grand occasion. The nobles of the various countries below also noticed the black-clothed child in the middle of Prince Ding and Princess Ding. At such a young age, he was already very handsome. A pair of big black eyes looked curiously at the people below. He did not feel the slightest fear. This child was the eldest son of the Prince Ding Mansion, who was named Yu Chun by young Master Qing Yun. Not to mention that Prince Ding and Princess Ding just got a pair of twins. Just by looking at the child in front of them, he was much more outstanding than everyone present. The Prince Ding Mansion's heir could have such an imposing manner and composure at such a young age. The Prince Ding Mansion should be proud to have a son like this. The guests on the observation deck weren't idle either, as there were singing and dancing below. While enjoying the rare magnificent song and dance, they chatted with the people sitting next to them. Then, they all came forward to present young Master Qing Yun's birthday gifts. Perhaps they learned from Yelu Ye's lesson at Mo Xiaobao's 1-month birthday banquet. This time, the gifts were quite well behaved. The gifts that the guests sent were all festive and appropriate birthday gifts. Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li were very satisfied with this. After all, they prepared this banquet for young Master Qing Yun's birthday. Naturally, they did not want any accidents to happen and ruin the old man's trust. Even Mo Xiaobao personally presented a 100 lifespan painting that he wrote. Although Mo Xiaobao was not yet 8 years old, under young Master Qing Yun's guidance, his studies were very good. His handwriting was also decent, making young Master Qing Yun very pleased. Chapter 781. Mr. Qing Yun was already old, and after receiving everyone's greetings, he only sat for a while before going back to rest. After Mr. Qing Yun left, Yi Li finally let out a sigh of relief. Although it was very grand to invite so many people to the birthday celebration, these people were not easy to get along with. If something were to happen in front of grandfather, it would make him unhappy for no reason. Thus, seeing that the banquet went smoothly before Mr. Qing Yun left, Yi Li's mood improved a lot. As for who would want to cause trouble in the future, the Prince Ding Mansion was not afraid. Mo Xiuyao lowered his head and saw the smile on Yi Li's lips. He raised his hand to hold her slender jade hand and laughed softly. No matter how much those people want to cause trouble, they still have the ability to see things clearly. They won't cause trouble at grandfather's birthday celebration. Yi Li smiled and nodded. I know, but I'm still a bit worried. Now that grandfather has gone back to rest, there won't be any problems. Knowing was one thing, but there would always be people who liked to cause trouble at this time. To Yi Li, nothing was more important than Mr. Qing Yun's mood today. After the birthday star left, the guests were much more at ease. When it came to Mr. Qing Yun, the #1 scholar in the world, Even the nobles of the various countries couldn't help but feel a bit restrained. Not long later, the atmosphere in the observation tower became lively. Sitting below, Enchanting casually drank his wine, while sizing up Yi, who was carefully wiping Xiao's mouth. Under the bright candlelight, the faint smile on the woman's lips seemed especially gentle and moving. Enchanting's sharp eyes slightly narrowed as his gaze swept over Xiao. I heard that Prince Ding and Princess Ding had twins a month ago. Such a happy occasion. I haven't congratulated you yet. Enchanting suddenly opened his mouth. His voice wasn't loud, but with his internal energy, it easily spread throughout the observation tower. The guests all came to their senses and hurriedly congratulated Xiao and Yi. Xiao smiled faintly and raised his cup. I thank Shilling Genom of Gojoseon, and thank you all. Enchanting smiled. Such a happy occasion. How can I not give a gift? I have prepared a big gift for Prince Ding. I hope Prince Ding will not reject it. At the same time, it shows the deep friendship between our two countries. Xiao's sword-like eyebrows slightly raised. He didn't believe that Enchanting would sincerely give him a gift for the twins, especially when he had just killed his grandson and granddaughter not long ago. Enchanting smiled. I sent people to search for this gift for a long time before I found it. It is absolutely precious. Xiao slightly curled his lips. If it is too precious, Genom of Gojoseon can keep it for himself. Enchanting smiled. Such a treasure. Only Prince Ding can appreciate it. If it was me, it would be a waste. Men. Not long after, a few West Hill guards came in carrying a tall box. They gently placed the wooden box on the ground and stood respectfully to one side, waiting for orders. Rather than calling it a box, it was more like an exquisitely carved wooden cabinet. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on the carved sandalwood cabinet in the hall. They didn't know what gift Genom of Gojoseon had given Prince Ding that made him so cautious. Looking at everyone's reaction, Genom of Gojoseon smiled with satisfaction. Open it and take a look. A guard stepped forward and pulled the wooden cabinet from above. A faint fragrance immediately filled the viewing platform. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim. In the hall where the wooden cabinet was originally placed, there was a woman in white kneeling. This woman looked to be no more than 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance wasn't particularly beautiful either. At least, there were at least 4 or 5 women present, including Princess Ding, who were more beautiful than her. However, she had a very strange attraction that attracted the gazes of all the guests present. He only felt that there was not a single part of this woman that was not perfect. It even made people feel that her not-so-beautiful appearance was flawless. If it was a more beautiful face, it would instead destroy this temperament. The woman was dressed in a plain white robe. Her hair was also casually draped over her shoulders. She didn't have any accessories on her body, and even her beautiful eyes didn't have any fluctuations. However, those who met her eyes couldn't help but hear their own thumping heartbeats. Genom of Gojoseon, what is the meaning of this? Before Xiao could speak, Su Hongyan's face had already darkened. Disregarding everything else, today was Master Qingyun's birthday, yet Enchanting had sent a beautiful young girl as Prince Ding. It was truly somewhat rude. Enchanting didn't mind. He smiled at Su Hongyan. I know that today is Master Qingyun's birthday. This is indeed impolite. However, I just got this treasure and hurriedly had someone send it to Glass City. This is why I wanted to give it to Prince Ding as soon as possible. After all, such a treasure, leaving it in Ai's hands is really unbearable. Enchanting revealed a tacit understanding smile and nodded at Su Hongyan. Xiao lowered his head to look at the white-robed woman. He raised his eyebrows and said, Genom of Gojoseon, what is the meaning of this? Enchanting smiled and said, Prince Ding and Princess Consort have been married for almost 10 years. However, the residence has yet to take in a concubine. I know that Prince Ding has such a wonderful woman like Princess Consort as his companion. This world's common women won't be able to catch his eye. This is why I sent this woman. I think this woman is definitely a good match for Prince Ding. Many people didn't think much of Enchanting's words. After all, Princess Ding could be said to be a peerless woman. Just based on appearance, She didn't lose to the white-robed woman. However, looking at the white-robed woman, they couldn't say anything bad about her. Thinking about it again, Princess Ding could be Prince Ding's wife at any time. However, if there were a few more beautiful concubines, it would also be a good story. Thinking like this, not only did they not have any thoughts about the white-robed woman, many people had other thoughts. Of course, this was excluding the messenger sent by the Emperor of Shilling. The messenger sent by the Emperor of Shilling only had his head lowered as he stared at the fine wine in the cup in front of him. It was as though the fine wine had suddenly become a nectar. In reality, it wasn't until Enchanting mentioned this that the people seated noticed that in all these years, Prince Ding hadn't taken a concubine. The entire Prince Ding mansion only knew that Princess Ding was a woman, even though Princess Ding was a peerless woman. But in the eyes of the nobles in this world where men were respected, Prince Ding's actions were absolutely inconceivable. Not to mention the nobles of other countries. Even many of the subordinates of Prince Ding's residence had some thoughts of disapproval. It wasn't that they had any opinions about Yi Li. It was just that since ancient times, 3 wives and 4 concubines had been the norm. Moreover, Mo Xiuyao was the owner of the Prince Ding mansion. In the eyes of many, he was destined to ascend the throne in the future. He absolutely couldn't place his thoughts on a woman. Seeing that many people had expressions of approval and envy, Enchanting smiled in satisfaction. He raised his head to look at Yi Li sitting next to Mo Xiuyao. Yi Li's expression was calm as usual. There was even a faint smile at the corners of her lips. On the other side, a trace of anger flashed through Su Qingyan's eyes. He was about to stand up. Su Qingbai, who was sitting next to him, held him down. Su Qingyan angrily said in a low voice, "Fourth brother, what are you doing?" Su Qingbai glanced at the indifferent Mo Xiuyao and said, "This is Prince Ding and Li'er's matter." The Su family wouldn't ask for Mo Xiuyao to only have Yi Li for the rest of his life. And if they weren't willing to insist on this matter, then no matter how many promises they made, it would just be nonsense. The Su family could only support Mo Xiuyao's decision and Yi Li's decision unconditionally, no matter what choice she made. Chapter 782. Definitely enough? Mo Xiuyao's cool voice rang out from the observation tower. The entire place was silent, and the outside was bustling with noise and excitement. "I can't see how this woman can compare to I's princess." Enchanting smiled confidently and said, "The princess consort is naturally a rare woman in this world, but the one in front of us isn't bad either. I can guarantee that her martial arts, talent, ability, and even medical skills and miscellaneous studies are among the best among the women in the world. If the prince doesn't believe me, why don't you ask the princess to come down and spar with her?" "Impudent!" Mo Xiuyao shouted angrily. A white shadow flashed across the sky, and everyone couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Mo Xiuyao had already appeared in front of the white-clothed woman, and mercilessly raised his hand to strike the top of the woman's head. Just when everyone thought that the woman was going to die, the white-clothed woman suddenly raised her head and raised her hand, blocking Mo Xiuyao's attack. Mo Xiuyao snorted, and once again clawed at the woman's shoulder. The white-clothed woman didn't meet force with force this time, and instead retreated. Mo Xiuyao's claw missed, and a hole was made in the wooden cabinet beside him. From this, it could be seen that if this claw had really grabbed the woman's left shoulder, it would have been crushed. Mo Xiuyao didn't pursue after his 2 moves had failed. He waved his sleeve and flew back to his original seat. However, a gust of wind shot out from his sleeve towards the white-clothed woman. Just now, the woman had narrowly avoided the attack. She had just stood firm, but this time, she couldn't avoid it. She could only raise her hand and take it head-on. Unexpectedly, she only took a step back. Even her expression didn't change. She just stood silently beside Enchanting. Mo Xiuyao stood above, looking down at Enchanting and the white-clothed woman, and calmly said, "To be able to take 3 of I's moves and not lose, you do have some skill." In fact, this wasn't just some skill. Just now, Mo Xiuyao had used at least 80% of his strength, and the white-clothed woman was able to receive it without any change in expression. This proved that whether it was her moves, reaction, or internal energy, they were all not bad. Even in the martial arts world, she would definitely be ranked. Most importantly, she didn't look more than 16 years old. This level of skill was about the same as Emo Xiaoyao's when he was the same age. Enchanting wasn't surprised and smiled. I said that I would definitely satisfy Prince Ding. Emo Xiaoyao looked at him and revealed a mocking smile. Who said that I will accept her? Seeing that she has some real ability, this prince will not fuss over this offense. Scram back to where I came from. Once these words were said, the crowd couldn't help but go into an uproar. Even the white-clothed woman's expression changed slightly. For such a beauty to be rejected by Prince Ding without any hesitation, in the eyes of the crowd, it was no different from a waste. After all, in this world, no one was forced to choose between a beauty and Princess Ding. Wasn't it the dream of all men to have a beautiful wife and concubines? Enchanting slightly frowned and looked at Emo Xiaoyao with some difficulty. Prince Ding is really going to reject her? Emo Xiaoyao coldly smiled, but didn't say anything. Enchanting seemed helpless and sighed. Does Prince Ding know where she came from? Emo Xiaoyao said. I already said, scram back to where you came from. She comes from Infinite Boundless Mountain. Enchanting's words were like a drop of water in a pot of oil, instantly causing the entire viewing tower to explode. Infinite Boundless Mountain was actually a place that the people of Dechu State were not unfamiliar with. It was the only main peak in the central and southern part of Dechu State, and was currently in the hands of Enchanting. However, the reason why everyone was familiar with it was not because of how beautiful its scenery was, or what miracles had appeared before. In truth, Infinite Boundless Mountain was hidden within countless mountains, and the surrounding peaks all looked the same. If one didn't have someone familiar to lead the way, it would be impossible to tell which one was Infinite Boundless Mountain, and it was very likely that one would get lost in the depths of the mountain. Legend had it that there was a hidden family in Infinite Boundless Mountain. The people of this family were proficient in astronomy, geography, medicine, divination, and astrology. The men were talented, and the women were capable of assisting the king and supporting the country. Every 60 years, a descendant would descend the mountain to temper themselves. However, this family was dominated by Een, and in the past few hundred years, it was extremely rare for a man to appear. As for the women who descended the mountain to temper themselves, all of them were extraordinarily intelligent. The most famous amongst them were the empress of the previous dynasty, and the queen of Dechu State's second generation, as well as the queen of the Western Tomb from 60 years ago, Enchanting's late grandmother. It was said that the ancestor of the Su family had also married a woman from Infinite Boundless Mountain, although the Su family had never acknowledged it. However, it was precisely because in a short few hundred years, 3 empresses had appeared, and their appearance had brought about the prosperity of the dynasty. From then on, Infinite Boundless Mountain had a secret connection with the rise and fall of the dynasty. Now this white-clothed girl had chosen Prince Ding. Could it be that the gazes with which everyone looked at Emo Xiaoyao had become somewhat different? Enchanting smiled. Now Prince Ding should understand, right? It's not that I want to make things difficult for Prince Ding and Princess, and intentionally destroy the relationship between the two of you. It's just that everyone somewhat understood now. This matter was naturally not something that Enchanting could decide. If Enchanting could make the decision, even if he himself could not marry this white-clothed girl, he could still let his son do so. How could he let his enemy have it so easily? Everyone involuntarily looked at Prince Ding. Prince Ding, who had just solemnly vowed to scram back to where she came from. Would he still be so resolute in the face of this white-clothed young lady with such a background? The viewing platform was silent for a long time. Just when many people thought that Prince Ding was about to agree, Emo Xiaoyao's cold voice resounded in the hall. Scram. Chapter 783. Emo Xiaoyao had never liked to shout loudly, but perhaps due to his personality, his voice always carried an extremely faint coldness. Therefore, when his face really darkened, even if it was just a casual sentence, one could feel the cold killing intent contained within. The girl who had originally been standing by Enchanting's side suddenly raised her head, looking in shock at the man whose hair was as white as snow. Clearly, she had not expected that Xiuyao would actually reject her so mercilessly. It must be known that although Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor only entered the world once every 60 years, the significance of this, as well as the tangled and complicated relationship between Infinite Boundless Mountain and the various countries over the past few hundred years, caused everyone to treat this with caution. Originally, Enchanting's suggestion to present her as a present had already caused her to feel somewhat displeased. However, she also knew that Enchanting's words were not false. She had indeed come a step too late, as Prince Ding already had a Princess Ding by his side. Although she did not believe that Princess Ding was superior to her, the 10 years of relationship between Prince Ding and the princess were not fake. A man could have countless beauties, but only needed a virtuous wife. In a situation where he already had Yi Li, her advantage was not so obvious. However, even so, her willingness to be a secondary consort was already a huge concession in her eyes. She had not thought that Xiuyao would actually reject her. This was originally already a temptation that no man would be able to reject. However, thinking about it from another perspective, if he was unable to reject such a temptation, wouldn't Prince Ding be as unbearably vulgar as the majority of men in the world? Prince Ding, are you really going to reject me? The white-clothed girl stepped forward asking. Xiuyao laughed coldly. I am not rejecting you. I want you to immediately scram. The white-clothed woman's face paled. No matter how calm and confident she was, it was unbearable for her to be humiliated in front of all the heroes of the world. The woman in white looked at Xiuyao, who was staring at her coldly, and then looked at Yi Li, who was sitting next to him. She asked, Princess Ding, what do you say? Yi Li looked up and asked in confusion, what does this imperial consort want to say? The woman in white stared at her and said in a low voice, I've heard that Princess Ding's talent and beauty are unparalleled, and that you are Prince Ding's virtuous wife. Presumably, Princess Consort also knows what to do. Prince Ding is the best. She definitely won't spoil Prince Ding's plans for unnecessary matters. Yi Li slightly frowned and asked in a soft voice, Miss, do you really want to know this consort's thoughts? The woman in white was slightly startled. She nodded and said, Of course. Yi Li indifferently said, From a woman's point of view, this consort only wants to tell you one word, scram. From a princess consort's point of view, this consort also wants to tell you to scram immediately. As a wife, she should naturally follow her husband's lead. Therefore, this consort still wants to tell you to scram back to where you came from. Well said. On the other side, Su Qingyan couldn't help but loudly praise. You. The woman in white's expression changed, but she didn't become angry. Instead, she quickly calmed down. She calmly looked at Yi Li and Xiuyao and said, It seems like today isn't the time to discuss matters. Why don't we wait for the two of you to think things through before we discuss? After she finished speaking, she didn't care about the gazes of the people in the hall. She calmly turned and walked away, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people. Yi Li's words clearly improved Xiuyao's mood greatly. Pulling Yi Li back to her seat, he looked coldly at Enchanting, saying, Genom of Gojoseon, is this the gift you sent? Enchanting shrugged rather helplessly, saying, I also had no choice. Anyway, the matter has already been settled. Prince Ding can just do as he sees fit. This time, he had really wronged Enchanting. First, let's not talk about whether or not this woman was of any use. Even Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation and hidden power was enough to make people drool. Even if there was something wrong with Enchanting's head, he wouldn't be willing to give such a person to his greatest enemy. But who asked Infinite Boundless Mountain to be within his current jurisdiction, and who asked him not to offend people of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Of course, there was no lack of thoughts of wanting to see Xiuyao and Yi Li fall out. Still, that was just in passing. Is Prince Ding really not interested in Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendant? Down below, Yaluyi asked darkly. While the northern tribes belonged to the barbarian tribes beyond the Great Wall, they had also been influenced by the culture of the Central Plains in recent years. This was especially so for those of the royal family, who were naturally very familiar with the legends of the Central Plains. While they didn't completely believe in those legends of infinite boundless mountain, there were times when these so-called legends were also a kind of symbol of the will of the heavens, and when used, might not necessarily be any less effective than a million brave soldiers. Holding Yi Li's hand, Emo Xiaoyao said mildly, "Whoever is interested, feel free to give it a try. I, however, do not have the fortune to enjoy it." Hearing his words, everyone felt both jealousy and admiration in their hearts. They were jealous of Emo Xiaoyao's luck, actually being unable to catch the descendant of a legendary hidden family who had personally delivered herself to his doorstep. At the same time, they also admired him for remaining unmoved in the face of such temptation for the sake of Princess Yi. On the Su family's side, Su Qingbai's sword-like brows furrowed slightly as he looked at Su Qingchen in front of him, saying in a low voice, "Big brother, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain have also come down to cause trouble. I'm afraid that there will be some trouble." Su Qingchen's smile was gentle and refined as he said mildly, "Fourth brother, do you still remember the last time something happened to someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" Su Qingbai furrowed his brows as he recalled. The last one seemed to be Genom of Gojoseon's grandmother. It should be more than 60 years ago. Logically speaking, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain should have appeared a few years ago, perhaps even 10 years ago. Su Qingchen raised his brows, saying, "The people of Infinite Boundless Mountain do indeed have some ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't have produced so many Empress mothers in succession. However, that's all. If they think too highly of themselves, my Su family is also not afraid of them." Between his brows, an air of transcendent arrogance naturally seeped out, as if he didn't place that so-called legendary family in his eyes at all. Hearing Big Brother's words, the expressions of the others also eased greatly. It was instead Su Qingyan who asked curiously, "Big Brother, have any of our family's ancestors ever married a girl of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" Su Qingzi swept him a cold glance. "There has never been anyone of unknown origins who entered the Su family. Go back and take a good look at the family records. The wives of the Su family didn't seek high positions, nor did they seek to be as beautiful as flowers or overflowing with talent. There was only one most important thing, which was to have a clean and upright family background. Those who liked to be secretive would never be able to enter the doors of the Su family, no matter what." Meanwhile, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain, in pursuit of that so-called mystery, just happened to like being secretive the most. Su Qingyan shrunk his neck back, hiding behind Su Qingbai, afraid of this cold-faced second brother as always. Up ahead, Su Hongyu and Su Hongyan, seeing their nephews calm and collected, also nodded their heads satisfactorily. The little interlude just now didn't affect the singing and dancing in the square below. The guests on the viewing tower very quickly began to drink and chat, but there were also many who were clearly a little distracted. Sitting beside Emo Xiaoyao, Yi Li frowned slightly as she looked at the guests below, just feeling that something was missing. Looking down at her frowning appearance, Emo Xiaoyao asked rather worriedly, "What's the matter, Li Li? Did that woman make you unhappy?" Yi Li shook her head, smiling mockingly at him. "Prince's luck with women really isn't bad. Even this legendary fairy reclusive has come to throw herself into his arms?" Emo Xiaoyao lifted his arms and pulled Emo Xiaobao, who was sandwiched between them, into his embrace, casually cupping his two paws so that they wouldn't get in the way. Only then did he reach Yi Li's side, curling his lips disdainfully. "What kind of beauty is she? Infinite Boundless Mountain has fallen, hasn't it? It actually doesn't even have a decent woman." Chapter 784. Yi Li smiled and raised her eyebrows, not commenting on Emo Xiaoyao's evaluation. Although in terms of looks, that white-clothed girl was slightly inferior to Yi Li, it was not by much. However, there was an extremely inexplicably attractive aura about her, different from Yi Li's noble and graceful aura that made others submit to her. It was clearly easier for her to arouse some of the deepest desires in men. This was something that even Su Zuidi and noble consort Lu could not compare to when they were in their prime. Just looking at the expressions of all the guests in the great hall just now, it could be seen. Emo Xiaoyao knit his brows slightly. "That girl is a little strange. Don't get too close to her, Li. Emo Xiaoyao had seen who knows how many supreme beauties. How could he not see that this white-clothed girl had a strange attraction to others? It was just a pity that this sort of attraction was virtually ineffective on an expert with a strong will like Emo Xiaoyao, and might even cause him to feel repulsed by it. Lily smiled and nodded. I know. Why would the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain come down at this time? It has already been over 70 years since the last time, right? Emo Xiaoyao laughed coldly. 10 years ago, the world's situation was unclear, and they also did not have the ability to predict the future, so they naturally had to wait and see. Saying that it comes once every 60 years is just a smokescreen to deceive the world. How could those few times when things were really so accurate? When the Dechu state was founded, they just happened to appear when Taizong was vying for the throne. Why didn't they accompany Taizu in conquering the world? There's also Lei Jinting's grandmother. It was also a good time. Yili came to a realization. If the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain really came out once every 60 years so coincidentally, she really had to believe that the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain could predict the future, choosing a master on behalf of the heavens. At the end of the day, Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation is still not bad. With the reputation of choosing a master on behalf of the heavens, the chosen one would be perfectly justified. It was no wonder that the expressions of everyone present were not right. This time, Yili actually believed that this was not some scheme of Lei Jinting's. Emo Xiaoyao said disdainfully, choosing a master on behalf of the heavens? No one could stop I from doing what I wanted. Do we need Infinite Boundless Mountain to come and pick I? Yili smiled. This consort knows that our prince is ambitious. I will definitely not rely on nepotism to seize the world. Looking at her bright and smiling face, if they weren't in public, Emo Xiaoyao would have pounced on her and kissed her. Boo-hoo! Emo Xiaoyao, who was unable to move, protested in dissatisfaction. But Emo Xiaoyao mercilessly stuffed a mouthful of food into his mouth. Unable to open his mouth to complain, Emo Xiaobao could only blink his large eyes at his mother in grievance. Unfortunately, in Yi Li's eyes, he looked like a father feeding his son, although it wasn't very gentle. Yi Li had always felt that it wasn't good for the father and son to always be at each other's throats, so she didn't disturb their interaction. Is there someone missing? Yi Li stared down thoughtfully. She had felt that something was missing since just now. However, that white-clothed girl from Infinite Boundless Mountain had come out to cause trouble, causing her to not have the time to think about this. Emo Xiaoyao swept his gaze downwards. Actually, with so many guests, just the observation tower alone had over 1,000 people, it really wasn't easy to discover who was missing. Emo Xiaoyao frowned, pondering for a moment before saying, Emo Xiaoyan and Jin Ning didn't come. Although these two didn't have any real power, their significance was still extremely great. After all, they were the rightful princes and princesses of the Dechu state, and had even taken the initiative to surrender the Chu capital to the Prince Ding mansion. No matter what, as long as these two didn't commit any heinous crimes, the Prince Ding mansion had to take good care of them. Looking at the two empty seats, Yi Li's mind flashed, and she abruptly looked towards Yelu Ye's side, saying, Noble consort Lu didn't come. Emo Xiaoyao didn't think much of it. Although she's claimed to be Yelu Ye's future princess consort, as long as there's no official wedding, she's not the princess consort of the northern tribes. Since she doesn't have any family background to show, it's normal for her not to come. Yi Li shook her head, saying, with her arrogance and self-confidence, she wouldn't think that she doesn't have the right to come. For someone like noble consort Lu, even if she was trampled into the mud, she would still think that she was the most noble and beautiful person in the world. Why would she think that she didn't have the right to attend the birthday banquet? Frowning slightly, she said, if that's not the case, where did she run off to? Could it be related to Prince Changxing and Princess Jin Ning? Emo Xiaoyao said, even if that's the case, Miss Li doesn't need to worry about them. Emo Xiaoyan and Jin Ning both have people protecting them. Even if something happens, it won't be them. Yi Li was helpless, and could only suppress the worry in her heart, waiting for the banquet to end before making a fuss. By the time the banquet ended, it was already close to midnight. Yi Li and Emo Xiaoyao, naturally brought Mo Xiaobao back to the residence first, and there would naturally be people to take care of the rest. Unexpectedly, just as they returned to the residence, Zhuo Jing came to report, Princess consort, something happened to Princess Zhen Ning. Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao could only settle Mo Xiaobao down and follow him to Prince Chongqing's residence. When they arrived at Prince Chongqing's residence, they realized that Zhuo Jing wasn't exaggerating. Something really did happen. Princess Zhen Ning sat in the main hall in a daze, and there was a pool of half-dried blood on the ground beside her. Princess Zhen Ning had always been brooding over her appearance, and would never forget to wear a veil in front of outsiders. But right now, her hair was disheveled, and the hideous scars on her face were undisguised in front of everyone. Not far away, there was a white-clothed woman lying on the ground, with a golden hairpin stuck in her abdomen, and her white clothes were already soaked with blood. Shen Yang and Mo Wuyo, who had come over at some point, were squatting on the ground to check. Yi Li looked at the woman's face, and sure enough, it was noble consort Lu. She sighed softly, and understood what had happened without asking. Yi Li looked at Mo Xiaoyan, who was standing at the side. Mo Xiaoyan's face was pale, and his hands hanging by his side were tightly clenched. He said in a low voice, Princess consort, I was impulsive and injured the 7th imperial consort of the northern tribes. Princess consort, please punish me. Mo Xiaoyan had experienced many unforeseen events these years, and had long understood the fickleness of human nature. If noble consort Lu was really the 7th imperial consort of the northern tribes, Yaluyi would definitely find trouble with the Prince Ding mansion after being injured by them. The best way for the Prince Ding mansion to settle the matter was naturally to hand her over, and at the same time get rid of him, the Prince of Dechu State. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Yi Li shook her head, and pulled Mo Xiuyao to the side to sit down, asking, Why is Mr. Shin here? How is her injury? Shin Yang rolled his eyes in annoyance and said, This old man was about to return after the banquet, but I was caught by this brat on the way back. Mo Wuyo raised his head and smiled at Yi Li, saying, Master and I passed by the entrance of the Prince Chongqing's mansion, and just happened to bump into Prince Chongqing. Princess consort, don't worry, Master's medical skills are superb, so there shouldn't be any problems. Shin Yang glared at Mo Wuyo and said, What do you mean there won't be any problems? In such a place, what's the use of this old man's medical skills? There was a difference between men and women, and Shin Yang couldn't treat an injury in a place like the abdomen. Although a doctor had the heart of a parent, noble consort Lu's identity was really not easy to deal with. Mo Wuyo wasn't afraid of being glared at by him, and said with a smile, Then Master can guide this disciple, and this disciple will treat it, okay? Chapter 785. Shin Yang reluctantly glanced at the unconscious noble consort Lu, then muttered a few words of advice to Mo Wuyo. After that, he let Mo Wuyo do the work, then walked to the side and sat down to rest. It seems that Wuyo has learned well from Mr. Shun, Yi Li said with a smile. Just by looking at Shin Yang's attitude towards Mo Wuyo, she knew that he was very satisfied with this disciple. Shin Yang said lightly, She's indeed more talented than the princess. In fact, Yi Li's talent wasn't bad either. It was just that her medical skills required calmness and patience. As Princess Ding, Yi Li was always busy with worldly affairs. How could she have so much time to concentrate on her studies, let alone inherit her teacher's legacy? At that time, Shin Yang and Dr. Lin did feel that it was a pity. Mo Xiaoyan stood on the side and listened to their conversation. He vaguely understood that noble consort Lu probably wouldn't die for the time being. For a moment, he didn't know whether to rejoice or regret. Glancing at his sister who was sitting next to him in a daze, Mo Xiaoyan cautiously said, Uncle Prince Ding, the princess. Tonight's matter. Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows. You still want to say that you hurt her? Mo Xiaoyan froze and nodded. I was angry. Xiaoyan will listen to Uncle Prince Ding's punishment. Mo Xiuyao looked at him with interest for a while before saying, I didn't expect Mo Jingqi to have such a son. It's not bad. But why did you take Princess Zhen Ning's golden hairpin to kill that woman? I I was younger brother. Princess Zhenning, who had been in a daze, suddenly raised her head and stopped Emo Xiaoyan. She looked straight at Emo Xiaoyao and said lightly, Uncle Prince Ding, I did it. You don't have to save her. If she dies, I'll pay with my life for her. Royal sister. Emo Xiaoyan was flustered and exasperated. He didn't care about noble consort Lu anymore. However, this royal sister, who was only 2 or 3 years older than him, had taken care of him since he was a child. Even though she wasn't smart or capable, she still tried her best to take care of her 2 younger brothers when they were neglected by their mother. Emo Xiaoyao frowned in displeasure. Enough, she is not the princess consort of the northern tribes. Even if she dies, Yaluyi will not seek revenge. Zhenning, tell I, do you really want her to die? Princess Zhenning's face was pale. She glared fiercely at the woman in white on the ground. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say anything for a long time. Emo Xiaoyao said casually, if you really want her to die, then go over and press that hairpin down further. Hearing his words, not only did Princess Zhenning tremble in fright, even noble consort Lu, who was lying unconscious on the ground, suddenly widened her eyes. She looked at Emo Xiaoyao in disbelief. Noble consort Lu couldn't hold on because of the blood loss, but she wasn't in a deep coma. She could hear some of the words of the people around her. When she suddenly heard Emo Xiaoyao's heartless words, it was no wonder she woke up from her coma. Emo Xiaoyao, who was thinking of a way to pull out the hairpin, looked helplessly at Emo Xiaoyao. Uncle Prince Ding, if you continue to provoke her, she really won't be able to hold on. Princess Zhenning definitely didn't hold back with this hairpin. If it pushed even a little deeper, noble consort Lu would be dead for sure. So they didn't dare to move her, and could only deal with her on the spot. Emo Xiaoyao said seriously, I's not joking. Emo Wuyo silently said, I believe you're not joking, but can you not be so serious right now? Is it really okay to instigate a daughter to kill her own mother? That's enough. Yili glanced at Emo Xiaoyao, telling him to shut up. She turned her head and asked, Wuyo, is it very difficult? Emo Wuyo hesitated, then said, It's not difficult. However, if you have something to say, just say it. Emo Xiaoyao said unhappily. He was very unhappy that he couldn't go back to hug his precious daughter, and then hug Li to sleep in the middle of the night. If it wasn't for the fact that Emo Xiaoyan and Zhenning were still useful, he would have just found a place to throw this woman away. In Glass City, Yaluyi probably didn't have the ability to find her. Emo Wuyo looked at Princess Zhenning and Emo Xiaoyan, then said with a frown, This injury isn't in the right place. Also, this woman seems to have miscarried half a year ago. If she's not careful, she probably won't be able to have children in the future. Since she was the future royal consort of the northern tribes, whether she could have children or not was probably a very important matter. Shen Yang raised his brows, then looked at Emo Wuyo and said, Disciple, your medical skills still need to be trained. Please advise me, master. Hearing his master's words, Emo Wuyo thought he had diagnosed wrongly, and a trace of annoyance flashed across his small face. Shen Yang said, How is this woman miscarrying half a year ago? She has miscarried at least 3 times in the past 2 years. Don't worry about it. You don't have to care about something that is destined to never exist again. Even if she didn't have this injury, she would still be like this. Looking at noble consort Lu, Shen Yang's expression was full of disgust. He naturally knew noble consort Lu's identity, but this wasn't enough for Shen Yang to dislike her. However, personally killing her own unborn child was not within Shen Yang's tolerance range. Shen Yang's medical skills could be said to be unparalleled in the current era. He could even calculate what kind of abortion medicine noble consort Lu had taken. Only a pregnant woman would take an abortion medicine that wouldn't harm her body, and even had some special effects. Mr. Shun, you mean she? Emo Xiaoyan stared at the woman on the ground, unable to ask. She used the dispersing fragrance pill, and more than once. Emo Xiaoyan's expression suddenly became complicated. Princess Zhenning was a girl, so she didn't know what it was. However, Emo Xiaoyan had been taught by the Lu family since childhood, so Prime Minister Lu didn't hide many private matters from him. Rather than calling the dispersing fragrance pill an abortion medicine, It was better to call it a kind of beauty-preserving holy product. However, it was unknown who discovered that this thing had even more miraculous effects when used during pregnancy. Once a woman was pregnant, her appearance would definitely not be as good as before. Such a miraculous medicine naturally attracted people like a flock of ducks. However, someone soon discovered that women who took this medicine during pregnancy would all have miscarriages without exception, and those who used it less would also give birth to stillbirths. However, the beauty-preserving effect was 10 times better than usual. There were even many women who didn't care about their unborn children for the sake of beauty. This medicine gradually became a forbidden medicine. A woman who lost her father had 3 miscarriages in 2 years, and all of them were caused by herself. Mo Xiaoyan really didn't understand what his mother, who used to be high and mighty, was doing. However, looking at that delicate and beautiful face, Mo Xiaoyan suddenly rushed out of the door and vomited. Although Princess Zhen Ning didn't know the inside story, the fact that noble consort Lu had an abortion during pregnancy was enough to shock her. She walked to noble consort Lu's side in a daze, and looked down at the beautiful woman on the ground. Princess Zhen Ning only felt the resentment in her heart surging out like a burst dam. Bitch! Chapter 786. Princess Zhen Ning stared at noble consort Lu, who was lying on the ground, her face full of cold resentment and disgust. Xin Yang's words completely shattered the last trace of hope Princess Zhen Ning had for her mother. Back when Princess Zhen Ning was drugged and knocked unconscious in the cold palace, her face was disfigured. For the past 2 years, she had never stopped hating noble consort Lu. However, this hatred was also mixed with a trace of hope for her mother and an unbreakable admiration. If noble consort Lu sincerely apologized to her tonight, even if there was a trace of guilt and remorse, Princess Zhen Ning's golden hairpin wouldn't have pierced her body. However, at this moment, there was only pure disgust and hatred in Princess Zhen Ning's eyes. The relationship between mother and daughter was truly severed from now on. Hearing Xin Yang's words, Mo Xiaoyan didn't hesitate anymore. She raised her hand and quickly pulled out the golden hairpin. For a moment, blood gushed out. Mo Xiaoyan ferociously took out the holy healing medicine Xin Yang refined and poured it on the wound. Then, she tore a piece of white gauze from noble consort Lu's clothes and began to bandage the wound. Princess Zhen Ning didn't hurt noble consort Lu's fatal spot. If the fact that she couldn't have children in the future was excluded, even if noble consort Lu died in the end, it would only be due to excessive bleeding. Now that she had Xin Yang's holy bleeding medicine, her life naturally wouldn't be in danger. After bandaging the wound, Mo Xiaoyan took out a small porcelain bottle and poured it down noble consort Lu's throat. After a moment, noble consort Lu's originally pale face began to recover its color at a speed visible to the naked eye. Isn't it a waste to let her use such a good thing? Did I give you such a thing for you to abuse? Xin Yang stared at Mo Xiaoyan and said unhappily. Mo Xiaoyan raised his head and smiled sweetly at Xin Yang. Master, Uncle Prince Ding, and the princess consort must have something to ask. How could they get anything out of her when she was in such a state just now? Xin Yang snorted. You're smart. Mo Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes and saw that noble consort Lu's complexion had improved. He nodded indifferently. Since it's fine. Xiaoran, what do you think? Mo Xiaoyan lowered his hands and said indifferently. Everything will be handled by Uncle Prince Ding. This person has nothing to do with me and my royal sister anymore, even though we are no longer related. She turned her head and glared at noble consort Lu's beautiful face. Gritting her teeth, she said, she still owes me a face. Hearing this, noble consort Lu's expression changed. She glared at Princess Zhen Ning and said angrily, What do you want? Princess Zhen Ning looked at her, gritted her teeth, and said word by word. You ruined my face, shouldn't you compensate me? Noble consort Lu sneered and said, I gave birth to you. Even if I took your life, you should accept it, let alone disfiguring your face. Mo Xiaoyan walked to Princess Zhen Ning's side and took her hand. He looked at noble consort Lu and said, I just said that we have nothing to do with you anymore. Noble consort Lu snorted disdainfully. The relationship between mother and son couldn't be broken so easily. In noble consort Lu's opinion, Emo Xiaoyan and Zhen Ning would always be her children. She could disdain them, but they absolutely couldn't be disrespectful to her. She forced herself to stand up and sit in a chair on the side. Although she had applied medicine and bandaged her wound, it wasn't something that could be healed in a short period of time, no matter how miraculous the medicine was. The intense pain made her expression become a bit twisted. She looked at Princess Zhen Ning with a gaze that seemed to be dipped in poison. Princess Zhen Ning didn't care about her gaze. When a person was in complete despair for another person, they would become extraordinarily cold. Noble consort Lu didn't care about Princess Zhen Ning and Emo Xiaoyan's reactions. If it was said that she still cared about these two children in the past, then the 2 years of painful struggle had completely wiped out that little bit of insignificant feeling. Since Emo Xiaoyao and Yili appeared here, most of noble consort Lu's attention had been focused on them. However, she no longer had the infatuation with Emo Xiaoyao like before. Instead, she was filled with bone-deep resentment. Noble consort Lu even hated Emo Xiaoyao more than Yili. However, she knew that she couldn't be impulsive anymore. She had always deeply experienced Emo Xiaoyao's heartlessness towards her. Prince Ding, why did you order these two to assassinate me? Could it be that you want to become enemies with the northern tribes? Noble consort Lu raised her chin and stared arrogantly at Emo Xiaoyao. She was now the future princess of the northern tribes. Her status wasn't lower than Emo Xiaoyao and Yili's at all. She didn't need to be polite with them. Yili was speechless. She silently glanced at Emo Xiaoyao sitting next to her. Was this the legendary hatred born from love? What do you mean? Princess Zhen Ning stepped forward and said, what does this have to do with the Prince Ding mansion? So what if this princess wants to kill you? At worst, this princess will pay with her life. Royal sister. Emo Xiaoyan looked deeply at noble consort Lu, then said to Princess Zhen Ning, let's see what Uncle Prince Ding has to say. Emo Xiaoyao tilted his head to look at Princess Zhen Ning and Emo Xiaoyan, then said with a faint smile, Zhen Ning, although your royal father is already dead, the Dechu state probably doesn't have anything to do with you now. However, as long as I acknowledge you as a princess, you are still a princess. Using your life to exchange for her life. I had people raise you for so long just for this. Who will compensate I for the losses? Princess Zhen Ning was stunned. She wasn't good at scheming. However, she also knew that being impulsive wouldn't solve the problem. She lowered her head and said, Uncle Prince Ding, it's Zhen Ning's fault. Only then did Emo Xiaoyao nod in satisfaction. He didn't raise this princess and this prince for fun. If they lost their lives for noble consort Lu, wouldn't he have wasted a lot of effort? Therefore, not only could Princess Zhen Ning and Emo Xiaoyan not die, they had to live well. Tilting his head to look at noble consort Lu, Emo Xiaoyao asked gently, I just want to become enemies with the northern tribes? What are you going to do? Do you want to go back and ask Yilu Yi if he's willing to go to war with I for you? You. Noble consort Lu was furious. Emo Xiaoyao's casual question was clearly mocking her. What about me? Emo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and smiled. Prince, the northern tribe's crown prince, and the 7th prince are here. Outside the door, Zhuojing came in to report. Oh, tonight, this small Prince Chongqing's mansion is quite lively. Let them in. After a while, Zhuojing came in with Yelu Hong, Princess Ronghua, and Yelu Yi. Seeing the blood on the ground, and the battered noble consort Lu, everyone was stunned. Princess Ronghua smiled and said, Princess, what happened? Yili said indifferently, nothing. Miss Qing Yaina suddenly broke into the Prince Chongqing's mansion with the intention of harming Prince Chongqing and the princess. The princess panicked and hurt Miss Qing Yaina. Yili, you're talking nonsense. Noble consort Lu roared, but the pain from her wound caused her to grit her teeth and break out in cold sweat. Yelu Yi walked over to support noble consort Lu, who was sitting unsteadily in her chair, and asked, what happened? Noble consort Lu bit her lip and said with grievance, Prince, it was Prince Ding and Princess Ding who ordered that girl to hurt me. Other than Princess Zhen Ning, the other 3 girls rolled their eyes and looked up at the sky. This noble consort Lu was at least 34 or 35 years old. Was it really okay to act like a spoiled child? Chapter 787. Yelu Yi obviously didn't approve of noble consort Lu's delicate appearance, so he asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Yi Li smiled faintly. "Miss Qingyina isn't going to say that I sent people to kidnap you, right?" Noble consort Lu misspoke. She did come to Prince Chongqing's mansion by herself, but she couldn't say the reason in front of so many people. Yi Li looked at Yelu Yi indifferently. "Prince Yelu, Miss Qingyina just accused me and Prince of instigating Princess Zhen Ning to assassinate her for no reason. Now I want to say that she broke into Prince Chongqing's mansion with the intention of harming the princess and Prince Chongqing, framing consort I." Yelu Yi frowned, although he believed noble consort Lu's words more in the current situation. However, Yi Li's words made him speechless. At the same time, Yelu Yi was also unhappy that noble consort Lu had come to Prince Chongqing's mansion without permission. Yelu Hong, who was sitting on the side, looked at Yi Li making trouble for Yelu Yi, but his expression was very calm. He just frowned slightly. Prince Ding and Princess Ding are the hosts, so they definitely wouldn't be so rude to guests. Moreover, it's unreasonable for them to instigate Princess Zhen Ning to assassinate Qingyina. But seventh brother, isn't Qingyina always with you? Why did she come to Prince Chongqing's mansion? Yi Li and Emo Shuyao instigated Princess Zhen Ning to assassinate Princess Zhen Ning was indeed unreasonable. However, Yelu Hong directly ignored the fact that Princess Zhen Ning had tried to assassinate noble consort Lu herself, obviously pushing the blame to noble consort Lu. Yelu Yi frowned. "Royal brother is right. I'm afraid today's matter is a misunderstanding." Princess Ronghua covered her mouth and smiled. "Seventh brother is right. Qingyina and the late noble consort Lu are so similar, so some misunderstandings are inevitable. 2 days ago, Prince Chongqing and Princess Zhen Ning came to visit. Could it be that Prince Chongqing and the princess are still?" Emo Xiaoyan cupped his hands to Princess Ronghua and said respectfully, "Aunt Ronghua, you are right. I and my royal sister were reckless before. The matter is already clear. Us siblings have nothing to do with Miss Qingyina. We mistook her for someone else." After saying that, Emo Xiaoyan took a step back and secretly grabbed Princess Zhen Ning's hand tightly. Princess Zhen Ning lowered her eyes to hide the hatred in her eyes. In the end, she didn't say anything and silently agreed with Emo Xiaoyan's words. Yelu Hong smiled. "It's fine as long as it's a misunderstanding, then tonight's matter," Emo Xiaoyan said. "Tonight was also a misunderstanding. Miss Qingyina's sudden arrival caused us to have some verbal conflicts. Royal sister thought that Miss Qingyina wanted to harm us, so she stabbed her. Please forgive me, Prince Yelu. If there is any punishment, Xiao Yun is willing to bear it." Since the other party had already said so, Yelu Yi naturally couldn't bully a 13 or 14-year-old child. She had no choice but to let it go. Noble consort Lu had suffered the hairpin in vain. With a sullen face, Yelu Yi bid farewell to Emo Shuyao and Yi Li. He supported noble consort Lu and was about to walk out. "Wait a moment." Shen Yang, who had been watching from the side, suddenly spoke. Although Yelu Yi wasn't familiar with Shen Yang, he knew that his position in the Prince Ding mansion was very special. He turned around and patiently waited for him to speak. Shen Yang took a prescription written by Emo Wuyo and handed it over. As the saying goes, a doctor has the heart of a parent. Since she's a patient, this old man can't ignore her. This girl has had too many miscarriages, and the injury just now was not in the right place. Take this prescription back and let her use it. Although it can't guarantee that she will be pregnant in the future, it's still good for her body. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the people in the hall became strange. In fact, Yi Li and the others already knew, but seeing Shen Yang say this to Yelu Yi in such a serious manner, Yi Li's smile couldn't help but stiffen. Yelu Ye's face was so gloomy that it was frightening. Even if the people of the northern tribes didn't particularly care about women, that was only referring to the common people of the northern tribes. The imperial family's degree of fussiness about these matters was no less than that of the people of the Central Plains. Even if Yelu Yi and noble consort Lu didn't have such a thing, It was still very embarrassing for someone to say it in front of so many people. Noble consort Lu's face was pale because of Xin Yang's words. She glared at Xin Yang and Imo Wuyo with resentment, then left with Yelu Yi in a daze. After Yelu Yi left, Yelu Hong and Princess Ronghua naturally couldn't stay any longer. They also got up and left. Seeing that there was nothing for him to do, Xin Yang stood up and left with Imo Wuyo. When he passed by Princess Jin Ning, he stopped to look at her and said, "You're quite an interesting girl. Come find me at the Prince Ding mansion later." After saying that, he left without looking back. Princess Jin Ning and Imo Xiaoyan didn't understand what Xin Yang meant, but Imo Wuyo did. However, Princess Jin Ning's injury was really too serious. Even Imo Wuyo, who was very confident in his master's medical skills, couldn't guarantee that she would be able to recover completely. He could only say, "Jin Ning, remember master's words. When you have time, you must come to the Prince Ding mansion." Seeing Princess Jin Ning nod, he then bowed to Yi Li and Imo Xiaoyao and chased after her. For a moment, only Imo Xiaoyao and the other three were left in the hall. The originally tense atmosphere in the hall suddenly quieted down. Imo Xiaoyao frowned as he looked at the young man and woman in front of him. Although there weren't many things happening tonight, two things happening in a row made Imo Xiaoyao very unhappy. His gaze towards Imo Xiaoyan and Princess Jin Ning also became somewhat unfriendly. Even if he didn't deliberately release it, this kind of expert's pressure still made Princess Jin Ning and Imo Xiaoyan sweat profusely. Yi Li sighed softly as she looked at the siblings' stubborn appearance. She raised her hand to hold Imo Xiaoyao's hand and said softly to Imo Xiaoyan and Imo Xiaoyao, "You're tired too, have a good rest. Don't act rashly in the future." Imo Xiaoyan nodded in agreement. Imo Xiaoyao stared at Princess Jin Ning and asked, "Do you still hate her in your heart?" Princess Jin Ning clenched her teeth and said, "I hate that I can't tear her to pieces." Imo Xiaoyao sneered and asked, "What right do you have?" Princess Jin Ning was stunned and looked at Imo Xiaoyao with some confusion. Imo Xiaoyao said indifferently, "Do you have the ability to tear her to pieces? I'm afraid that the next person to fall into her hands will be you." Princess Jin Ning clenched her teeth. In terms of ability and means, she was indeed inferior to noble consort Lu. Imo Xiaoyao pulled Yi Li to stand up and looked at the two indifferently, saying, "The two of you are not allowed to interfere in noble consort Lu's matters anymore. Similarly, you're not allowed to help her. If I find out that the two of you have secretly done something you shouldn't do, don't blame I for being ruthless." Imo Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat. Prince Ding's words meant that he planned to deal with noble consort Lu. Supporting Princess Jin Ning, Imo Xiaoyan said respectfully, "We will follow Uncle Prince Ding's instructions. Xiaoyan and royal sister will not act rashly. She has nothing to do with us anymore." "Very good." Imo Xiaoyao nodded with satisfaction and walked out holding Yi Li's hand. Back at the mansion, Yi Li and Imo Xiaoyao both gave strict orders not to tell Master Qingyun about what happened last night. Actually, at Master Qingyun's advanced age, he had already let go of many mundane matters and was very open-minded. However, as a younger generation, he still didn't want the old man to worry about this matter that they could solve themselves. Early the next morning, Yi Li and Imo Xiaoyao had just gotten up when the guard outside came to report, "Miss Dongfang requests an audience." Yi Li was stunned for a moment. She couldn't figure out who this Miss Dongfang was. Imo Xiaoyao disdainfully curled his lips and said, "That one from Infinite Boundless Mountain. Go ask young Master Qingchen to deal with it. I and the princess consort still have matters to attend to." The guard accepted the order and left. Yi Li asked in confusion, "What matters do we have?" Imo Xiaoyao said with a smile, "We're going to see my little princess and cultivate our relationship." In the main hall of the Prince Ding mansion, a woman dressed in white sat quietly drinking tea. She didn't seem to be angry at the master's neglect at all. She just waited calmly. After an hour, there were footsteps outside the door. The white-clothed woman's lips curled into a perfect smile. When she raised her head, she didn't see the white-clothed, white-haired, handsome man. Instead, she saw another white-clothed, black-haired man with a snow-white robe. Although young Master Qingchen attracted attention, She put all her attention on Immerse last night. She actually didn't see Su Qingchen sitting in the middle of the Su family. However, she could guess his identity just by looking at the elegance of the white clothes. She stood up and smiled faintly. Dongfang Yu greets young Master Qingchen. Su Qingchen smiled faintly and nodded. Miss Dongfang, you don't have to be so polite. Please sit down. Dongfang Yu nodded and sat down. She looked at Su Qingchen and said, Is Prince Ding here? Su Qingchen smiled. Prince Ding has some matters to attend to. He has no time to receive you. Please forgive him. Dongfang Yu looked at Su Qingchen and raised her eyebrows. Young Master Qingchen is hostile to me? I don't know how I made young Master Qingchen unhappy. Su Qingchen smiled but didn't say anything. Dongfang Yu sighed helplessly and said, I understand. Young Master Qingchen is Princess Ding's cousin. No wonder young Master Qingchen is dissatisfied with my daughter. Su Qingchen shook his head faintly and said, I'm afraid Miss Dongfang thinks that I am hostile to you. Miss Dongfang thinks too much. The relationship between Li and Prince Ding is their business. Whether it is good or bad, it is their business. The Su family will not interfere. Dongfang Yu said, My daughter has no intention of interfering in the relationship between Prince Ding and Princess Ding. Su Qingchen said, This is Miss Dongfang's business. Chapter 788. Compared to Immerse merciless mocking and scolding, Su Qingchen's casual politeness and distance made Dongfang Yu feel more at a loss. Dongfang Yu looked at Su Qingchen for a long time, then sighed and asked, You don't believe me, young Master Qingchen? Su Qingchen smiled and didn't say anything, neither yes nor no. Dongfang Yu clearly took Su Qingchen's silence as a tacit agreement. She said mildly, Young Master Qingchen, rest assured. The reason why I chose to marry Prince Ding as a concubine is not because I want Prince Ding's love or anything else. It is only to assist Prince Ding. Once Prince Ding reigns supreme, Dongfang Yu will naturally leave to pursue my own happiness. I will not miss Prince Ding, nor will I bring any trouble to Princess Ding. Su Qingchen said with a smile, Miss Dongfang, you can go and pursue your own happiness now. Forgive me for being blunt, but Prince Ding does not seem to need your help. Also, it must be because Miss Dongfang has not left the mountain for too long, so you do not know some of the established rules of this world. For example, a concubine cannot be said to marry but to accept. How could a woman who could say so openly that she wanted to marry Prince Ding be as uncompetitive as she said? Perhaps she really did not need Prince Ding's love, because what she wanted was something more important than Prince Ding's love. Su Qingchen had never had a good impression of these so-called legendary reclusive families. As for the so-called choosing a master on behalf of the heavens, it was even more nonsense. If they really had such foresight, they should have come out 10 years ago. Although the world's situation was not clear now, Immerse obviously had the greatest chance. Adding on the power of infinite boundless mountain, it was indeed not difficult to create a hegemon that could unify the world. However, even without the people of infinite boundless mountain, the Prince Ding mansion could still do this. Why did they have to take on such a reputation? A trace of anger flashed in Dongfang Yu's eyes. She found it hard to remain calm at Su Qingchen's lack of respect for her. However, Su Qingchen's attitude made it impossible for her to vent her anger. For a moment, her expression became a little complicated. Dongfang Yu had always been aware of her own strengths and abilities, but she also knew that her innate talent was useless in front of determined people like Immerse and Su Qingchen, so she did not want to embarrass herself. He looked at Su Qingchen calmly and said, I think there are some things that I need to discuss with Prince Ding personally. Perhaps Prince Ding will give a different answer. After all, young Master Qingchen doesn't have full authority to represent the Prince Ding mansion, right? Su Qingchen raised his handsome eyebrows slightly and didn't comment. He simply said, Prince Ding is not free right now. Dongfang Yu is not in a hurry. I can wait. Su Qingchen frowned as he looked at the woman in front of him. He suddenly felt that this woman was trouble. What he didn't know was that this woman was indeed troublesome. But she wasn't Immerse's problem. Dongfang Yu was indeed very patient. Su Qingchen sat in the hall, and accompanied her to drink 6 or 7 cups of tea. Even young Master Qingshan, who was always calm and composed, felt that he couldn't bear to sit in silence with such a woman. However, Dongfang Yu didn't seem to be impatient at all. She sat in the hall with a dignified expression, and occasionally took a few sips of tea. It wasn't until close to noon that Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li finally arrived. Seeing the stiffness and helplessness hidden under Su Qingshan's gentle and elegant face, Mo Xiaoyao's mood was obviously much better. As the host and guests sat down, Mo Xiaoyao leisurely leaned back in his chair and let Yi Li take the lead. Yi Li smiled at Dongfang Yu and said, "I haven't asked for your name." Dongfang Yu stood up and bowed, saying, "My name is Dongfang Yu. Greetings to Princess." Yi Li nodded and said with a smile, "Miss Dongfang, you don't have to be so courteous. The prince and I have some small matters. Sorry to have kept you waiting." Dongfang Yu smiled and said, "How could it be? With young Master Qingshan receiving us, my daughter and young Master Qingshan had a great time." Mo Xiaoyao smiled at Su Qingshan and said, "In that case, why don't Miss Dongfang tell young Master Qingshan directly? Now most of the affairs in the Prince Ding mansion are handled by young Master Qingshan." Hearing this, Dongfang Yu frowned slightly and said, "Prince, forgive my daughter for speaking bluntly. Although the prince and princess are deeply in love, and the prince also trusts the Su family. Since ancient times, the monopolization of power by relatives has been the source of chaos. Moreover, the prince hasn't really achieved anything yet. If in the future..." The three people in the hall silently looked at Dongfang Yu's words of advice. They were speechless. It was not that there was anything wrong with these words. At a certain time, these words could even be said to be priceless advice. But the problem was that Miss Dongfang was now neither a relative of the Prince Ding mansion, nor a confidant of the Prince Ding mansion. Was it really good to speak so bluntly and speak ill of others in front of the Su family and Princess Ding? Did this girl actually memorize these words from a book? After Dongfang Yu finished speaking, Yi Li smiled and said, "Thank you for your advice, Miss Dongfang. I think the prince knows these things in his heart." Dongfang Yu frowned slightly and looked at Yi Li with some dissatisfaction. She said, "Princess Ding, although the Su family is your maternal family, as the saying goes, a married daughter is like spilled water. Moreover, you are not the daughter of the Su family. Shouldn't you be thinking of the Prince Ding mansion wholeheartedly? How can such a thing for the family be the way of a wife and concubine?" Yi Li was silent. This girl not only wanted to be a loyal minister and a martyr, but also wanted to be Empress Zhongsun. If the successors of the Boundless Mountain were all like this, Yi Li really doubted how they climbed to the position of empress. She should have been killed by the emperor because of her advice. "Miss Dongfang, you don't need to think about these things for the time being. Why don't you tell me what you came to the Prince Ding mansion for?" Yi Li finally couldn't help but interrupt her and ask. Dongfang Yu's beautiful face showed a trace of disbelief. She stared at Yi Li and said, "Princess Ding, don't you understand?" Finding that her intelligence was doubted, Yi Li felt very innocent. "What should I understand?" Dongfang Yu said, "I went down the mountain to assist the new emperor." "Then go and find your new emperor." Yi Li's mood was also rather gloomy as she replied mildly. Dongfang Yu choked on her words, forgetting about Yi Li for a while before she smiled mildly. "The new emperor chosen by this generation of Infinite Boundless Mountain is Prince Ding. I am this generation's successor of Infinite Boundless Mountain, and have come to assist Prince Ding by the mandate of heaven." Yi Li looked at her, asking, "Miss Dongfang's so-called assistance is to enter the Prince Ding mansion and become the prince's concubine?" Dongfang Yu said unconcernedly, "This is only a temporary measure. Since Prince Ding has already taken a wife, I will naturally not interfere. When Prince Ding unifies the world, I will naturally retreat with success." Yi Li tilted her head and passed the problem to Mo Xiaoyao. "Prince, do as you see fit? Do you want to take in a female strategist?" Mo Xiaoyao's reply was merciless. "Throw her out for I, wasting I's time." "Prince Ding." Dongfang Yu opened her eyes wide in shock, glaring at Mo Xiaoyao as she said, "Prince Ding, do you really not want to know what benefits I can bring to you? Infinite Boundless Mountain's power is much greater than you can imagine." Emo Shuyao didn't even lift his eyes as he said indifferently, I have no interest in that infinite boundless mountain of yours. Moreover, with a successor like you, even if infinite boundless mountain could withstand 1,000,000 mighty soldiers, it would still be useless. Chapter 789. Such words were even harder for Dongfang Yu to accept than directly looking down on infinite boundless mountain. She truly wanted to assist Emo Shuyao. She also believed that with her and infinite boundless mountain's help, Prince Ding would definitely be able to unify the world in the shortest time possible, becoming a mighty ruler of his generation. And infinite boundless mountain's reputation and position would also become even more resounding and consolidated. But she had never thought that Emo Shuyao would actually look down on her and the power behind her so much. Looking at Emo Shuyao, then looking at Yi Li, Dongfang Yu had a flash of understanding in her heart. Turning her head towards Su Qingchen, she frowned, saying, Since Prince Ding is unable to accept this method of mine, then we can also change it. Emo Shuyao's expression was indifferent and unmoved, only to hear Dongfang Yu say in a clear voice, Since Prince Ding is unwilling for me to marry into the Prince Ding mansion and ruin the relationship between Prince Ding and Princess, then I can also join the Su family. The three present were all stunned. Emo Shuyao and Yi Li's gazes all turned towards Su Qingchen. Currently, only Su Qingchen and Su Qingyan were not engaged in the Su family. This Dongfang Yu would not want to marry Su Qingyan, whom she had barely met before. Therefore, there was only young Master Qingchen. Emo Shuyao's gaze instantly became playful, looking at young Master Qingchen, as if he were looking at a piece of good fat meat. If young Master Qingchen could obtain infinite boundless mountain's help, then it would obviously be very worthwhile. Of course, this girl called Dongfang Yu could only obediently stay at home to take care of her husband and children and serve her in-laws. Don't even think about it. Su Qingchen unceremoniously rejected Emo Shuyao's plan. Emo Shuyao did not care. He did not see infinite boundless mountain's power as important. It would be good if they had it, but it did not matter if they did not. Moreover, if he really obtained infinite boundless mountain's assistance, he would still have to think of a way to claim it as his own, lest another bored woman appear 100 years later to choose him on behalf of the heavens. Emo Shuyao shrugged and said, All right, this matter. I'll leave it to young Master Qingchen to handle. I will not ask any more questions. Li, let's go first. There are still things to deal with in the study. Yi Li looked at Su Qingchen hesitantly. Emo Shuyao pulled her out and comforted her. Don't worry. If young Master Qingchen can't even handle such a small matter, then he wouldn't deserve to be called the #1 young master in the world. Thank you, Brother Qingchen. Seeing Emo Shuyao pull Yi Li away without hesitation, Su Qingchen wanted to throw all the booklets in the study at his face. He had worked so hard for the Prince Ding mansion. Not only did Emo Shuyao not feel the slightest bit of gratitude, but he was also constantly trying to make things difficult for him. Master Qingchen, Dongfang Yu said softly. Miss Dongfang. Su Qingchen stopped Dongfang Yu and said indifferently, Say no more. The Prince Ding mansion does not need Miss Dongfang's help. Most importantly, the Su family did not need a daughter-in-law like Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu said unhappily, Prince Ding did not say that. Isn't young Master Qingchen's decision too selfish? Su Qingchen waved his sleeve and called for the guards outside. Send Miss Dongfang out. No one is allowed to let her in. I won't give up. Dongfang Yu said firmly. Su Qingchen's expression did not change. Take her away. After sending Dongfang Yu away, Su Qingchen walked to the study with a gloomy face. In the study, Emo Shuyao and Yi Li sat together. The warm and intimate atmosphere made one feel unnecessary. Seeing Su Qingchen enter, Yi Li stood up and said with a slight smile, Big brother, Dongfang Yu has been sent away? Su Qingchen nodded, and his sharp gaze swept towards Emo Shuyao. Emo Shuyao was not the least bit ashamed. He said with a smile, What is young Master Qingchen doing? I did not say that. Isn't it that Miss Dongfang has taken a fancy to you? Su Qingchen said with a slight smile. That kind of girl, even Prince Ding does not like her. Who can she like? Although it was only a short conversation, Su Qingchen had already seen it clearly. He did not know how the people of the infinite boundless mountain raised Dongfang Yu. There was no such thing as love in her heart. Therefore, she really did not interfere in the relationship between Mo Xiaoyao and Yili. Of course, she did not propose to marry Su Qingchen because she liked him. Instead, she felt that it was convenient. Marrying into the Prince Ding mansion as a concubine, or marrying Su Qingchen as his wife, she could use her own methods to help the Prince Ding mansion dominate the world. At the end of the day, she only had her so-called ambition and achievements in her heart. But her ambition, in the eyes of people like Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingchen, was simply illusory. Other than the power of the infinite boundless mountain behind her, she had nothing. Not to mention assisting the emperor of a generation, a talented general, the head of the harem. The woman behind the emperor did not just need to be smart. Smart women could be found everywhere in the world. Similarly, there were also many who were proficient in the 4 arts. But women who could stand side by side with men, like Yili, were one of a kind. But in terms of the 4 arts, poetry and even astrology, Yili might not be as good as Dongfang Yu. But if Dongfang Yu could do it, there were naturally other women in the world who could do it. And what Yili could do, there were very few women in the world who could do it. Therefore, she was one of a kind. Moreover, even the previous queens of the infinite boundless mountain had never placed themselves in the position of the emperor's assistant. In short, Dongfang Yu thought too highly of herself. Mo Xiaoyao smiled. Maybe that Miss Dongfang likes immortal young masters like young Master Qingchen? Prince, I suddenly remembered that I want to travel for a few days. I'll have to trouble Prince to settle the matters of the Prince Ding mansion by yourself. Su Qingchen's expression was unfriendly as he said mildly. At the mention of this issue, Mo Xiaoyao could only admit defeat. After all, if he really forced young Master Qingchen to leave, it would be a huge loss. Coughing twice, Mo Xiaoyao said righteously. In any case, I'll leave Dongfang Yu to deal with. Whether you want to kill her or take her home, I don't need to ask. Brother Qingchen, don't worry. No matter what you do, I and Li will definitely support you. Saying that, he did not forget to pat Su Qingchen's shoulder to show his support. Su Qingchen raised his hand in disdain and pushed Mo Xiaoyao's hand away. Had he ever seen such a shameless person? Young Master Qingchen deeply felt that having such a cousin-in-law was definitely the greatest disbelief in his life. If he had known that there would be such a day, he would never have married Li to such a shameless person. Yili helplessly put her hand to her forehead and said, Big brother Xiaoyao, what exactly is this infinite boundless mountain? Yili was not completely a person of this world after all. There were many things that were not especially important that she would not go out of her way to understand. For example, this infinite boundless mountain. Yili really did not have much of an impression of it. Su Qingchen sat down and said with furrowed brows, The reason why infinite boundless mountain is so mysterious is greatly related to the fact that it has produced 3 empresses. Also, the people who have left the mountain for training in the past are indeed all elites amongst people. But if they are really so powerful that they can rule over the world, young Master Qingchen's lips curled up slightly. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili were both people who understood him very well. They naturally understood the mockery in his words. Chapter 790. Young Master Qingchen continued. The 3 generations of queens just happened to belong to 3 different countries, having existed for hundreds of years. Therefore, it should not be false to say that infinite boundless mountain possesses great power. Otherwise, it would not have been able to maintain its glory and mystery for hundreds of years. Now, since infinite boundless mountain's successor has left the mountain, then the others of infinite boundless mountain should not be too far away. Therefore, the prince now has 3 options, top, middle and bottom. Mo Xiaoyao smiled thoughtfully. I am all ears. Su Qingchen smiled. The bottom option is that the prince does not need to care about Dongfang Yu. When she has given up, she will definitely choose someone else. At that time, the Prince Ding mansion will have one more great enemy. The middle option is that the prince complies with Dongfang Yu's wishes taking her in as a concubine. At that time, Infinite Boundless Mountain will definitely assist the Prince Ding Mansion with all its might. Emo Xiaoyao said, I always only take the best option. Su Qingchen smiled. The best option is to exterminate Infinite Boundless Mountain. From then on, the legend of Heaven's chosen master will cease to exist. Good idea. Emo Xiaoyao nodded in agreement. Su Qingchen nodded, smiling. It is indeed a good idea. This way, even if the prince unifies the world in the future, he will not have to worry about being controlled by Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, the problem now is, Infinite Boundless Mountain is not so easy to exterminate. Although their Prince Ding Mansion disdained Infinite Boundless Mountain, it did not mean that others would think the same. As long as someone was interested in Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor, in Heaven's chosen master, there would naturally be others who would deal with the Prince Ding Mansion for them. It was even to the point that if they were not careful, it might lead to people from all over the world simultaneously attacking the Prince Ding Mansion. Even if the Prince Ding Mansion did not fear them, fighting on multiple fronts was definitely an extremely dangerous thing. Emo Xiaoyao pondered for a moment before saying, It is also not as difficult as you think. The only ones who can truly go against us are Emo Jingli and Lei Zhenting. Lei Zhenting was restrained by the Emperor of Xiling, and Emo Jingli. There was still Lei Zhenting in the middle. If he wanted to go against he would have to deal with Lei Zhenting first. As for the northern tribes and the northern region, they won't have the chance. Su Qingchen also knew that Emo Xiaoyao's plans for the northern territory of the northern tribes had a high chance of success. There was indeed something that could be done. He raised an eyebrow at Emo Xiaoyao and asked, Prince, have you decided? Emo Xiaoyao snorted, not bothering to answer. Actually, there was another path that Su Qingchen did not mention. Mo Xiaoyao could agree to work together with Infinite Boundless Mountain. After the matter was settled, he could also make a move to deal with Infinite Boundless Mountain. With Mo Xiaoyao's intelligence, if he really wanted to scheme against Infinite Boundless Mountain, Su Qingchen also felt that it would not be difficult. Looking at the two men with serious faces, Yili asked, Is it possible that Dongfang Yu is not someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain at all? Don't you feel that she is a little too? Su Qingchen shook his head. Dynasties change. Moreover, it is impossible for a family to always be filled with elites. But that Dongfang Yu is indeed someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Yili raised an eyebrow, not understanding. Su Qingchen said with some disgust, The people of Infinite Boundless Mountain's Fang family know a secret art, innately causing others to have a good impression of them. Lear also saw the scene at the banquet last night, didn't you? Yili wanted to say, was that really a good impression? She felt that what Dongfang Yu had aroused was some hidden desire in men. How does Big Brother know so clearly? Yili asked curiously. Su Qingchen did not hide it, saying mildly, Isn't there a legend that our Su family's ancestor married a girl of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Then what is the truth? There is indeed such a girl. However, the Su family's ancestor did not marry her. That year, he almost fell into her trap. Therefore, he once mentioned this in a letter he left behind, warning his descendants to be careful of Infinite Boundless Mountain's women, Su Qingchen said. So there was such a thing. This was the first time Yili and Mo Xiaoyao had heard of it. Apart from being a little surprised, the impact on Infinite Boundless Mountain had decreased by a little. Yili pondered for a moment, then asked, Since Infinite Boundless Mountain has the ability to choose its master on behalf of the heavens, why was Lei Zhenting willing to send Dongfang Yu to the Prince Ding Mansion? Could it be that Lei Zhenting is also under the control of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Su Qingchen shook his head. It shouldn't be to the extent of being under control. Perhaps Lei Zhenting knew that with Lei Tingfeng's ability, he might not be able to deal with Infinite Boundless Mountain. As for the Prince Ding Mansion, perhaps Lei Zhenting was betting that the Prince Ding Mansion would not accept Dongfang Yu. This way, the Prince Ding Mansion and Infinite Boundless Mountain would definitely turn against each other. At that time, no matter who Infinite Boundless Mountain chooses to support, with the powerful enemy of the Prince Ding Mansion present, he would also be able to take advantage of the situation. Lei Zhenting was renowned throughout his life. It was a pity that his greatest regret was his son Lei Tingfeng. This was not to say that Lei Tingfeng was not good. Lei Tingfeng was very good, whether in terms of personality or ability. However, he was still not good enough. Having grown up under his father's sharp edge since young, Lei Tingfeng clearly did not have the temperament to surpass the Prince Ding Mansion's master. Therefore, as the Crown Prince of Jinnan Palace, Lei Tingfeng was sufficient. However, as the king who shouldered the entire Western Tomb on his shoulders, he was still not strong enough. That is to say, Lei Tingfeng will also not cooperate with Infinite Boundless Mountain, Mo Shuyao pondered. Then Infinite Boundless Mountain's most likely choice would be Mo Jingli. Mo Jingli, the regent of the Dechu state, occupying the richest part of the Dechu state, Jiangnan, he had millions of soldiers under his command. Most importantly, while he was vicious, he lacked decisiveness and boldness. Such a person was practically the best candidate for a puppet. If it were Mo Shuyao, he would also choose Mo Jingli. Su Qingchen raised her brows. Do we need to make a move on Mo Jingli now? Mo Shuyao shook his head saying, it's still not the time. Right now, we still have to deal with Yelu Yi and Ren Qining. However, we still need the things that we need. Send someone to tell Mo Jingli that the things I want will be sent over as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will give the things he wants to Lei Jinting. He only wanted a few treasures. If they were in Lei Jinting's hands, who knew what Lei Jinting would want? While you're at it, let's also reveal Dongfang Yu's intentions to Mo Jingli. See what Mo Jingli will do. If that's the case, then Yi Ying's side. Yi Ying was also an important chess piece. However, if they wanted Yi Ying to work for them, while also stuffing people into Mo Jingli's side, that was obviously impossible. Yi Ying would also not be so obedient. Su Qingchen shook her head, saying, Lier, you don't need to worry about this. If Dongfang Yu really helps Mo Jingli, then Yi Ying will be even more reliant on the Prince Ding Mansion. The Yi family would never be able to rise again. Yi Ying was still able to sit firmly in the position of princess consort largely because she was Princess Ding's younger sister. Once an extremely important woman appeared by Mo Jingli's side, then the Prince Ding Mansion's support and help would become even more important to Yi Ying. Chapter 791. Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet could be said to have ended perfectly. Many of the guests who had come left one after another. This included Su Qingbai and Mr. Xiuting, who had rushed back to the Western Tomb as soon as possible. After all, the Western Tomb had just been conquered, and there was still a need for someone to hold the fort there. As for the dignitaries of the various countries, including Genom of Gojoseon and Mo Jingli, they had no intention of leaving. Everyone understood that the true negotiations and game of chess would only truly begin today. Whoever left at this time would be the one who would be sidelined in this competition, thus losing the opportunity to seize the initiative. Glass City, which was originally already surging with undercurrents, became even more mysterious because of the sudden appearance of the Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor at Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet. In the Prince Ding Mansion, Lei Jinting sat in the study, sipping tea as he sized up Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao, who were seated at the head of the table, his expression somewhat complicated. Although he had already considered the possibility that Mo Xiuyao might reject him when he had brought Mo Xiuyao to Glass City, he still could not help but feel a little shocked when he heard Mo Xiuyao's answer from the start. To be honest, if not for the fact that the Emperor of Xiling had once given birth to a queen of the Infinite Boundless Mountain, Lei Jinting was not sure if he would be able to reject such a temptation. However, Mo Xiuyao had already rejected him. Although he was a little shocked, the overall situation was still in his favor. He naturally would not be so foolish as to push the power of the Infinite Boundless Mountain onto Mo Xiuyao. Prince Ding's decisions always surprise I. Lei Jinting raised the teacup in his hands towards Mo Xiuyao to show his respect. Mo Xiuyao smiled mildly. Genom of Gojoseon overpraises me. Isn't Genom of Gojoseon also not interested? Lei Jinting sighed somewhat regretfully. If I said that I was really not interested in the power of the Infinite Boundless Mountain, that would be a lie to Prince Ding. It was just that it wasn't suitable. Moreover, even at this age, I am still being manipulated by others. I might as well just die here and be done with it. If Infinite Boundless Mountain only had Dongfang Yu alone, it would not be of much use. After Dongfang Yu, there would definitely be others joining. Lei Zhenting's grandmother was of the Infinite Boundless Mountain. He could be said to be the person who understood Infinite Boundless Mountain the most in this world. Naturally, he would not allow himself to be made into a puppet. I heard that Prince Ding has officially rejected Dongfang Yu. However, based on Ai's understanding of her, I'm afraid that she won't give up so easily. Lei Zhenting calmly reminded. Even though he and Mo Xiuyao were destined to be enemies, but sometimes they could still work together. And Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, "So what if I don't give up? Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendant is actually like that. That so-called Infinite Boundless Mountain is also about to fall, right?" Dongfang Yu was indeed very powerful, at least in terms of martial arts, and Mo Xiuyao had never seen a woman who could surpass her. Even among men, she could probably be ranked in the top 10 of the Jianghu. Since she was from the Infinite Boundless Mountain, she should also be proficient in the 4 arts. Also, with Lei Zhenting's personal guarantee, Dongfang Yu was also proficient in medicine. It was just a pity that while Dongfang Yu was good at everything, her brain was not too good. Looking at Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li smiling at each other, the indistinct intimacy between the two of them made one feel as if there was an invisible layer binding them together, completely different from outsiders, while outsiders were also unable to come between them. Lei Zhenting lowered his eyes slightly deep in thought. Since someone from Infinite Boundless Mountain has come out, they will definitely have to choose someone to support. Since Prince Ding has already rejected her, who is the most likely candidate? Mo Xiuyao did not hide it. Mo Jingli. Lei Zhenting's face darkened slightly. Mo Jingli was currently in a standoff with him at the Cloudwater River. If he had Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, the one who would be out of luck would still be him. Mo Xiuyao was far away, and naturally did not have anything to do with him for the time being. Looking at Lei Zhenting's displeased expression, Yi Li smiled mildly. Genom of Gojoseon need not worry. If Mo Jingli is too strong, it would also be of no benefit to our Prince Ding mansion. We will naturally not sit by and do nothing. Lei Zhenting was not someone who could be so easily convinced. Looking at Yi Li, he smiled. Let Infinite Boundless Mountain support Mo Jingli, and then I and Mo Jingli will fight it out to the death, while the Prince Ding mansion will reap the benefits. The two of you are really good at scheming. Since that is the case, I feel that Renqining is more suitable. Being the orphan of the previous dynasty, wouldn't that be more in line with Infinite Boundless Mountain's choice? Mo Xiuyao's smile was slightly cold. Renqining does not have that fate. Lei Zhenting's gaze hardened, as he quickly calculated the meaning behind Mo Xiuyao's words. The Prince Ding mansion intended to make a move against the north? He had thought that the Prince Ding mansion's greatest enemy should be the northern tribes. Seeing Lei Zhenting's doubts and guesses, Mo Xiuyao did not explain, saying mildly, Genom of Gojoseon can just watch. Mo Jingli is Infinite Boundless Mountain's only choice. Of course, Genom of Gojoseon has another choice. I'm all ears, Lei Zhenting said cautiously. With a smile on his face, Mo Xiuyao said casually, before Infinite Boundless Mountain chooses who to assist, exterminate them. SSS. Lei Zhenting could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, staring at Mo Xiuyao for a while before finally confirming that he was not joking, and was really proposing such a thing. After a long time, Lei Zhenting sighed. Prince Ding does not understand Infinite Boundless Mountain very well. Therefore, he does not know their strength. Mo Xiuyao nodded. I indeed do not understand Infinite Boundless Mountain very well. The descendants of Infinite Boundless Mountain had never offended anyone from the Prince Ding mansion. Therefore, to the Prince Ding mansion, the so-called Infinite Boundless Mountain was no more than an illusory legend. Perhaps the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain themselves also knew that the previous leaders of the Prince Ding mansion had never been suitable for them to manipulate. But even so, Infinite Boundless Mountain still does not have the strength to contend against a country, right? Since they had planned so many things, It proved that the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain also had ambitions. Harboring ambitions, yet always hiding behind others. That could only mean that the other party still did not have the ability to fight for the throne under the heavens. Enchanting shook his head. The reason why the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain have never participated in fighting for the throne under the heavens. It is not that they do not have the strength to do so. Rather, Enchanting hesitated for a moment, seemingly unsure whether he should say it or not. Pausing for a moment, he still finally opened his mouth. The reason why they have always been in seclusion is because the previous lords of Infinite Boundless Mountain have always been women. They simply cannot come out and fight for the position of the 9 and 5 themselves. The Central Plains are not like the Southern Territories. Whether it is the common folk or the generals, they would definitely not tolerate a woman ascending to the throne. Therefore, they can only choose to control it from the shadows. After hundreds of years of operation, Infinite Boundless Mountain's influence has long since spread throughout the western tomb of the Dechu state, even the southern Zhao northern tribes, and even the various countries of the western regions have traces of them. Does Prince Ding know why Dongfang Yu has suddenly appeared this time? Mo Xiaoyao raised his brows, not saying anything. Enchanting said coldly, because quite a few of the people Prince Ding killed in the Emperor of Shiling's city belonged to Infinite Boundless Mountain. It was only because of this that the current Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain was alerted. Prince Ding is right. Actually, the best choice for Infinite Boundless Mountain right now is Mo Jingli, because currently, Infinite Boundless Mountain has the most influence in the imperial court of the Dechu state. Also, even in your Prince Ding mansion, I cannot guarantee that there are no people of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Chapter 792. The Prince Ding mansion had been managed by the successive generations of Prince Ding like an iron bucket. Although Enchanting had said so, he also understood. If there was a place that was the hardest to enter in the all-pervasive Infinite Boundless Mountain, it would definitely be the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiaoyao nodded. Many thanks to Genom of Gojoseon for your guidance. I understand. To be honest, I also don't have the time to deal with the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain for now. However, I can guarantee that when you are facing off against Mo Jingli, I definitely won't sneak attack you from the back. In fact, when necessary, I can even provide you with some information. Of course, this is only limited to Infinite Boundless Mountain. Enchanting naturally knew that although the Dechu state's imperial court had moved south, news of the Prince Ding mansion in the Dechu state did not lag behind in the slightest. In truth, receiving such a promise from Mo Xiaoyao had already greatly exceeded Enchanting's expectations. It was just that, how much of Mo Xiaoyao's words could be trusted was a problem. Mo Xiaoyao could also see Enchanting's doubts, as he said in a heavy tone, "Since I have already made a promise, I naturally won't go back on it. If I were to fight with Genom of Gojoseon, it would still be better to fight openly on the battlefield." Enchanting looked deeply at the two of them, before standing up and saying, "I understand. Since that's the case, I will take my leave. I won't see you out." Not long after sending off Enchanting, Yelu Hong and Princess Ronghua arrived. The four of them had a secret discussion in the study for close to 2 hours. Naturally, there was no way to know what they had discussed. However, the matter of Prince Ding and Yelu Hong's spying had reached Yelu Ye's ears without any hindrance. In the guest house, Yelu Ye's face was as cold as water. Dismissing the guard who had come to report, a cold light flashed in his cold eyes. Yelu Hong wanted to join forces with Mo Xiaoyao to deal with him. Not so easy. On the bed in the inner room, noble consort Lu leaned against the headboard with a pale face. The wound on his abdomen was still throbbing with pain after a night of rest. Noble consort Lu's expression turned even colder when she recalled how Princess Jin Ning had pierced the hairpin into her abdomen without the slightest hesitation, and how obedient her children were to Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. "Prince," noble consort Lu called after thinking for a while. A moment later, Yelu Yi walked in with a gloomy face. His gaze towards noble consort Lu was filled with disgust and disdain. Originally, they were just using each other. After last night, Yeluyi looked at noble consort Lu with even more disgust. Although noble consort Lu had helped him a lot during the siege of the Great Chu Kingdom, he still had a lot of things to worry about. But after that, it didn't have much use. The only reason he hadn't abandoned her was because this woman knew how to please men, especially his imperial father. Yeluyi couldn't understand how his wise and mighty imperial father had become so muddle-headed in his 60s. Even though he didn't have any real relationship with noble consort Lu, every time he saw Yelu Hong look at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, Yeluyi wished he could strangle this woman to death. "What is it?" Yeluyi asked coldly. Because of Yeluye's cold tone, noble consort Lu bit the corner of her lips in disgust. But she also knew that they were currently in Glass City, and she had to rely on Yeluyi for everything, so she didn't dare to get too angry. She could only force out a smile and said, "Your Highness doesn't seem to be in a good mood? Is it because of Yelu Hong and the Prince Ding mansion?" Yeluyi looked at her coldly. Noble consort Lu said lightly, "Prince doesn't need to look at me like that. This isn't something difficult to guess. After all, Yelu Hong's crown princess is Princess Ronghua. Even though Princess Ronghua didn't have a good relationship with the Prince Ding mansion when they were in the capital, but this time in Glass City, her relationship with Yi Li is very good. If Yelu Hong wants to ally with Prince Ding to deal with the prince, he naturally has to start with his crown princess." Yeluyi snorted. "If Yelu Hong wants to deal with it depends on whether he has the ability. He's just lucky to have a queen as his birth mother." Noble consort Lu said, "That's true. It's a pity that the prince is good at everything, but he doesn't have a queen as his mother." These words just happened to poke at Yeluye's sore spot. He glanced at her and said, "If you want to talk nonsense with then don't say anything. Recuperate well lest you accidentally die in Glass City." Hearing the word die, noble consort Lu couldn't help but tremble slightly. In these 2 years, she had experienced too much pain and struggle, and she understood the horror of death even more. She also knew that Yeluyi was dissatisfied with her. If she angered Yeluyi, even if others didn't do anything to her, Yeluyi would use some means to kill her in Glass City. Thinking of this, noble consort Lu couldn't help but resent Yi Li's good luck. She thought that she wasn't inferior to Yi Li in any way, but Yi Li was the princess consort of Ding country, and was doted on by her husband, and admired by the world, while she had to struggle bitterly just to survive. Seeing that noble consort Lu was tactful, Yeluyi snorted with satisfaction. Noble consort Lu hurriedly threw away her thoughts and said to Yeluyi, "Prince, if His Majesty knows that the Crown Prince has such a good relationship with Prince Ding, do you think His Majesty will be angry? Even if His Majesty won't do anything to the Crown Prince, what about the Crown Princess?" The people of the northern tribes originally rejected outsiders. This was also the reason why noble consort Lu changed her name to Qing Yaina. She had already lost her noble status. If she still stayed in the northern tribes as a woman of Dechu state, she would have been trampled to the bottom of the mud. Hearing this, Yeluye's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. If he could get rid of Yelu Hong, that would be the best. Even if he couldn't, he had to get rid of Princess Ronghua. Once Princess Ronghua was gone, the relationship between Yelu Hong and the Prince Ding mansion would naturally be in danger. Continue. Noble consort Lu nodded. If His Majesty knows that the Crown Prince is colluding with the Prince Ding mansion, then Prince Ding mansion will do something, or something will happen at the border. Yeluyi lowered his eyes and didn't speak. Noble consort Lu knew that he was thinking and didn't disturb him. After a long time, Yeluyi looked up at noble consort Lu and said, "I'll have to rely on you for this." Noble consort Lu understood and smiled. "I understand. I will immediately write a secret letter to His Majesty." The king of the northern tribes was old, and had become more and more muddle-headed in recent years, so he favored noble consort Lu. He didn't even care about the fact that she was his son's fiancée. Although Yeluyi only casually said this in order to bring noble consort Lu to the army, after all, many people still knew. This caused Yeluye's face to turn ugly. Not long after the secret letter was sent out from the post house, a gray figure appeared in the study of the Prince Ding mansion. In the study, Emo Xiaoyao and Yi Li sat opposite Yilu Hong and Princess Ronghua, leisurely drinking tea. Taking the secret letter from Jin, Emo Xiaoyao didn't read it, and just handed it to Yilu Hong. Yilu Hong silently opened the letter and read it. His face couldn't help but turn green, and he slammed the letter on the table. Princess Ronghua frowned with worry, picked up the letter and read it. Her face was also a little ugly. If this letter was sent to the northern tribes, the first unlucky person would be her. Chapter 793. Emo Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Prince Yilu doesn't need to worry. In Glass City, if I don't agree, even a mosquito won't be able to fly out. But once Yilu Yi returns to the northern tribes, I won't be able to do anything. Yilu Hong looked at Emo Xiaoyao and said calmly, "Doesn't Prince Ding just want to see us brothers fight?" Emo Xiaoyao smiled. "Prince Yilu, what you mean is that if I didn't exist, you brothers would get along well? All these years, I haven't done anything to the northern tribes." Yilu Hong was silent. It wasn't just these years. In fact, ever since he was made the crown prince, he had never stopped fighting with Yilu Yi. Don't think that the tribes outside the Great Wall didn't fight and scheme against each other. In fact, their fights were even more vicious and bloody than those hidden in the dark. Yilu Yi was a very ambitious person, but Yilu Hong wasn't a soft egg that could be bullied by anyone. Since he was already the crown prince, he couldn't back down. Therefore, the conflict between the two brothers wasn't something that anyone could change. Although he understood that Emo Xiaoyao was right, it didn't change the fact that he had been tricked by Emo Xiaoyao. Emo Xiaoyao smiled. "Prince Yilu, you don't need to worry too much. At least you and I have the same goal, don't we? You don't want to be defeated by Yilu Yi. I want to drive the northern tribes out of the central plains and take a few people's lives." Yilu Hong said unhappily, "I am the crown prince of the northern tribes." Did driving the northern tribes out of the central plains sound good to him? Although Yilu Yi had taken the land, Yilu Hong was indeed jealous. But it was still the land that the northern tribes had taken. The central plains was rich. Who wouldn't want it if they could? Emo Xiaoyao said lightly, "The central plains is different from the northern tribes. Does Prince Yilu really think that the northern tribes can do anything in the central plains?" Yilu Hong raised his eyebrows, unconvinced. "Prince Ding, how do you know that it can't be done?" "At least not now," Emo Xiaoyao retorted bluntly. "The central plains isn't that weak. Even without the Dechu state, there was still the Prince Ding mansion. Even without the Prince Ding mansion, there was still the West Hill. The northern tribes want to take over the central plains, but I'm afraid they are not strong enough." Even though this was the truth, it was also a warning. Although Yilu Hong was unwilling, he knew that what Emo Xiaoyao said was the truth. Throughout history, the northern tribes had attempted to invade the central plains countless times. However, none of them succeeded even once. Even though the dynasties in the central plains had declined to the extreme, the ones who eventually destroyed them were still the central plains people themselves. Perhaps the people of the central plains were very fond of internal strife, which was why they had been replaced generation after generation. But at the same time, they were also very determined to resist the invasion of foreign races. When necessary, they could even put aside their previous grudges and join forces to fight against foreign enemies. This was also the reason why many foreign races had failed to invade them in the end. Yilu Hong sighed and said, "Perhaps Prince Ding is right." He wasn't sitting here to discuss with Emo Xiaoyao whether the northern tribes should invade the central plains. Before he could sit on the throne of the northern tribes, he didn't have the right to discuss this issue. Emo Xiaoyao didn't want to dwell on this matter. He looked at Yilu Hong and smiled. "Prince Yilu, don't worry. I also have no interest in the northern tribes. So there isn't any conflict of interest between us, is there? After Yilu Yi is finished, and Prince Yilu becomes the king of the northern tribes, I will take back what originally belonged to the Central Plains people. Besides, there is almost no need for Prince Yilu to do anything. In fact, Prince Yelu is the one who reaps the benefits. Then, what are Prince Ding's plans? Yelu Hong had to admit that he was indeed moved by Emo Xiuyao's words. As the prince of the northern tribes, he definitely wouldn't have any thoughts of betraying the country by colluding with the Prince Ding mansion. But his position as the prince wasn't that comfortable. Although his mother was the queen of the northern tribes, his father favored Yelu Ye's mother more. More importantly, Yelu Yi had more military power behind him than he did. And in the northern tribes, without enough military power, you were nothing. In the past year, his father had been very fond of the woman Yelu Yi brought back. Although he often mocked Yelu Yi, the pressure on him had increased. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, he definitely wouldn't accept the olive branch from the Prince Ding mansion. He wouldn't betray the northern tribes, but he had to protect his position in life. Emo Xiuyao smiled faintly and looked at Yili beside him. Just now, Yili had been writing on the paper. Now, she put down the pen and handed the letter full of words to Yelu Hong. Yelu Hong took the letter and was stunned. The handwriting on the letter was at least 90% similar to the previous one, but the content was completely different. Yelu Ye's letter was naturally about Yelu Hong colluding with Prince Ding to betray the country, but the name of the main character in this letter was changed to Yelu Yi himself. The other party wasn't the Prince Ding mansion, but the North's Ren Qining. Previously, when Ren Qining and Yelu Yi signed the treaty at the Purple Thorns Pass, it was Yelu Yi who acted first and reported later. It wasn't impossible to make a fuss about this matter. Thinking of this, Yelu Hong looked at Yili with admiration. "Thank you, princess." Yili smiled faintly. Crown Prince doesn't need to be so polite. Although my handwriting is slightly different from noble consort Lu's, it shouldn't be a big problem. If it was in the Dechu state, there might be some problems. The Dechu state's court didn't lack famous calligraphers, but in the royal house of the northern tribes, it was already very good to be able to completely translate a letter, let alone distinguish the handwriting. Even if someone compared noble consort Lu's handwriting, they probably wouldn't be able to see the small difference. But even if the king can cover it up for now, when Yelu Yi and noble consort Lu return to the northern tribes, it will still be exposed. Princess Ronghua frowned and said worriedly. Emo Xiuyao said, "You don't need to worry too much about this. In a short time, Yelu Yi probably won't be able to return to the royal house of the northern tribes. As long as Crown Prince Yelu doesn't let him write a letter to the king of the northern tribes, it's fine. As for noble consort Lu, she doesn't need to go back. With the king of the northern tribes' love for noble consort Lu, if she really returned to the royal house of the northern tribes, it wouldn't be a good thing. Moreover, from the beginning, Emo Xiuyao didn't plan to let those two people leave the Dechu state. But there's one more thing that I need the crown prince's help with." So many things were planned by Emo Xiuyao and Yili. Yelu Hong naturally knew that he couldn't just do nothing. He nodded and said, "Prince Ding, just say it." Emo Xiuyao said lightly, "Send Helian Zhen to the Central Plains to assist Yelu Yi." Yelu Hong was a little hesitant. Although Helian Zhen gradually fell out of favor because of the defeat, he was still Yelu Ye's uncle. In these years, there were signs of him gradually recovering. Not to mention, many of the generals in the northern tribes' army used to be Helian Zhen's subordinates. If he really led the army, he was afraid that he would be nurturing a tiger. "Don't worry, Helian Zhen, I will help you take care of it." Yelu Hong just remembered that Emo Xiuyao and Helian Zhen had a deep hatred for each other. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "In that case, I will go back and report to father to allow Helian Zhen to lead the army." "Thank you." Chapter 794. While Yi Li and Emo Xiuyao were busy dealing with the people in power, Su Qingchen was not efficient at all. Emo Xiuyao finally found his conscience and realized that he had not handled the matter properly this time. It was very rare for him to take over young Master Qingchen's previous work, so that young Master Qingchen could concentrate on dealing with a certain woman. Within a few days, almost the entire Ding Wangfu knew that there was a young lady who was chasing after young Master Ching Chun and wanted to marry him. It was a pity that young Master Ching Chun did not fancy her and avoided her like the plague. Mrs. Su, who was worried about her eldest son's marriage, also heard the news and came. But less than a quarter of an hour after seeing Dongfang Yu, Mrs. Su went back in disappointment. In private, she said to second Madam Su, "I'd rather Ching Chun never marry a wife in his lifetime than let him marry a wife who daydreams all day long and insists on forcing others to be with her." No matter what the Su family's attitude was, Dongfang Yu came to the Prince Ding mansion every day to ask for young Master Ching Chun's marriage. It became a classic funny story that people in the Prince Ding mansion must see every day. Some people even began to bet on how long young Master Ching Chun could hold on and whether he would marry Dongfang Yu. "Young Master, Miss Dongfang wants to see you." Young Master Ching Chun, who rarely had half a day of leisure, heard the guard's report. Looking at the guard's smiling face, young Master Ching Chun, who had always been gentle and elegant, wanted to tear Mo Xiaoyao into pieces. Rubbing his eyebrows, Su Ching Chun said, "Tell Miss Dongfang that I'm not here." For the first time in his life, young Master Ching Chun wanted to run away. The guard looked at him awkwardly and said, "Miss Dongfang said that she knew young Master Ching Chun was in the mansion. If young Master Ching Chun doesn't want to see her, she will wait at the gate and won't leave." "Young Master, there are many people watching at the gate." Su Ching Chun was so angry that he laughed. But on second thought, although these guards wanted to watch the fun, they were indeed in a dilemma. Dongfang Yu's identity was special. At the very least, before the Prince Ding mansion investigated the background of Infinite Boundless Mountain, they could not be too forceful with her. Sighing helplessly, Su Ching Chun nodded and said, "Please invite Miss Dongfang in." The guard took the order and left. Su Qingyan popped out of the door and looked at Su Ching Chun with a grin. "Big brother, that Dongfang Yu came to find you again?" Su Ching Chun glanced at him indifferently and asked, "If you have nothing to do, go and help me receive the guests. Don't wander around all day with nothing to do." Su Qingyan shrunk his neck and looked at Su Ching Chun pitifully. These days, even Big Brother was starting to vent his anger on him. He had been busy in the north for more than a year. It was not easy for him to take advantage of his grandfather's birthday to come back and rest for a few days. How did it become idle? Su Qingyan carefully stepped into the study and obediently stood in front of Su Ching Chun as punishment. "Big brother, I was wrong." Su Ching Chun smiled and asked, "What were you wrong about?" Su Qingyan sternly said, "I shouldn't have wandered around aimlessly. I'll immediately go help father and uncle. Then I'll go to grandfather to fulfill my filial piety. My biggest mistake was that I shouldn't have gloated in front of Big Brother." Su Ching Chun nodded with satisfaction and smiled. "Since you know you were wrong, accompany Big Brother to receive Miss Dongfang." "Ha!" Su Qingyan's eyes widened in horror. He had seen the power of that Dongfang Yu. No matter who she met, she dared to open her mouth and preach. She dared to talk about the way of a ruler in front of Prince Ding. She dared to talk about the way of a wife in front of Sister Lier. She even dared to talk about the way of a mother in front of his mother. Had she ever been a mother? Su Qingyan even suspected that if she was in front of his grandfather, she would also dare to teach him how to be a teacher. Just thinking about it was like a nightmare. "Big brother, there's no need, right? Miss Dongfang is here for you." Su Ching Chun smiled and said, "How can that be? Miss Dongfang is an important guest of the Prince Ding mansion. It will be more formal if you and I receive her together." Su Qingyan still wanted to say something to beg Big Brother to let him go, but a figure in white appeared at the door. Dongfang Yu stood at the door and saw that Su Qingyan was also there. She frowned slightly and nodded. "Why is fifth young master here?" Su Qingyan could not help but widen his eyes. This girl's words were too strange. What did she mean by why was he here? Even if the Prince Ding mansion was not his home, it was still his cousin's home. It should be more normal than her, who had nothing to do with him, right? Also, what did she mean by frowning and nodding arrogantly? Taking a deep breath, fifth young master Su finally remembered how to treat a guest. His handsome face stiffened as he nodded and said, "Isn't Miss Dongfang here too?" Dongfang Yu could not help but widen her eyes. Even if she was slow, she could feel the hostility in Su Qingyan's words. She just did not understand why Su Qingyan was so rude to her. She did not expect that when she greeted Su Qingyan just now, he was also rude. Su Qingchen smiled and said, "Miss Dongfang, please sit down. I don't know why you came so early in the morning. What do you want to say?" Dongfang Yu nodded and said, "I want to ask if young Master Qingchen is willing to marry me." Hearing this, Su Qingchen's smile froze. Su Qingyan's mouth twitched. After a pause, Su Qingchen lowered his eyes and drank his tea indifferently. After a moment of silence, he said, "Miss Dongfang, I remember that I have already given you this answer. I refuse." "Why?" Dongfang Yu frowned. Obviously, she could not understand why Su Qingchen would refuse her. After thinking for a while, she said, "I heard that young Master Qingchen and the Queen of Nanzhao have an unusual relationship. But the Queen of Nanzhao is already married and is about to have a child. Since young Master Qingchen is a talent, you should know when to make a decision. Moreover, I am not worse than the Queen of Nanzhao. As long as it is something she knows how to do, I can do it better than her." "Miss Dongfang." Su Qingchen frowned. A trace of displeasure appeared on his handsome face. He said in a low voice, "The Queen of Nanzhao and I are just friends. Please do not spread nonsense. As a man, I am fine with it. But the Queen of Nanzhao and her husband are very close." "Miss Dongfang." Dongfang Yu was stunned. She nodded and said, "Okay, I am wrong. Since that is the case, why is young Master Qingchen unwilling to marry me?" Su Qingyan, who was listening by the side, deeply felt that even though his brother was full of wisdom and schemes, people like Dongfang Yu were his nemesis. Lightly coughing to clear his throat, Su Qingyan asked with a smile, "Miss Dongfang, why does my brother have to marry you?" Dongfang Yu said matter-of-factly, "Young Master Qingchen is Princess Ding's cousin. After young Master Qingchen and I get married, our infinite boundless mountain will naturally help Prince Ding. I will also secretly assist Prince Ding to achieve great things. Is there anything wrong with that?" Su Qingyan nodded and smiled. "There is nothing wrong with that. But why does the Prince Ding mansion need you to assist? Could it be that without you, the Prince Ding mansion can't achieve great things?" Chapter 795. Such a direct and almost rude question caused Dongfang Yu a lot of trouble. She frowned and thought for a moment, then said, "But Prince Ding is the future emperor I chose. Naturally, I need to assist him." Su Qingyan rolled his eyes and said, "Without your assistance, the Prince Ding mansion has always been good. With me, the Prince Ding mansion will naturally be better." Dongfang Yu finally found her confidence and said, "After so many years, the Prince Ding mansion still can't get rid of the predicament of being surrounded by strong enemies. Isn't that enough to prove that the assistants around Prince Ding are not capable enough?" The two brothers were silent. This was definitely an indiscriminate attack. In one sentence, she scolded everyone in the Prince Ding mansion, old and young. "Predicament, my ass," Su Qingyan cursed in his heart. Was Dongfang Yu blind? Now the Prince Ding mansion was at least the second largest, if not the largest in all the countries. Its military strength was so strong that no one dared to fight against it. What else could it want? In just a few years, it was attacked from all sides and suddenly swept the world. Such a legend could not be written in a storybook. Su Qingyan secretly circulated his qi, looked at Dongfang Yu and nodded. "I understand. In fact, we are very happy that Miss Dongfang is willing to assist Prince Ding." Su Qingchen, who was rubbing the teacup, raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at his eccentric fifth brother without saying anything. Dongfang Yu looked at Su Qingyan with some confusion, not knowing why he suddenly changed his mind. Su Qingyan coughed softly and said seriously, "Director Mo of the Prince Ding mansion has lost his wife for many years and has been single all the time. But he is one of Prince Ding's most trusted people. If Miss Dongfang is willing to marry him, I believe that both Prince Ding and the princess will believe in the sincerity of Miss Dongfang and the boundless mountain. Big brother, what do you think?" This time, it was young Master Qingchen's turn to twitch the corner of his mouth. But he was good at hiding it, so he naturally raised the teacup to cover his mouth. He nodded calmly and said, "Fifth brother, you are right." Mo. Director Mo? Dongfang Yu was dumbfounded. He couldn't remember who this Director Mo was. In fact, Dongfang Yu had seen Director Mo several times, but she was so arrogant that she only nodded slightly in front of fifth young Master Su. Even if Director Mo had a special status, in her eyes, he was just a servant of the Prince Ding mansion. Naturally, she would not take it to heart. Su Qingyan nodded and said sincerely, "That's right, it's that uncle in black clothes. Speaking of which, in the entire Glass City, he's the only uncle who can still look so heroic while wearing the black clothes of the Prince Ding mansion." The other older men were either generals or scholars. Only Director Mo, who had a martial arts background, but had always been doing literary work, could make the black outfit look so heroic and elegant. Dongfang Yu immediately remembered the gray-haired director in black when he came to the Prince Ding mansion for the first time. His face suddenly became very embarrassed. Even when Mo Xiaoyao asked her to get lost in front of so many people, her face was not so ugly. How can that be? Dongfang Yu almost reflexively refused. Su Qingyan blinked and said, "Why not? Although our Su family is very close to Prince Ding, we can't compare to the old people who have been in the Prince Ding mansion for many generations. Director Mo's butler has been loyal to the Prince Ding mansion for many generations. What's more, Miss Dongfang doesn't care who she marries, right? Isn't it good to marry Director Mo? I believe that although Director Mo has no intention to marry, he will sacrifice himself for the Prince Ding mansion without hesitation. But my brother is different. Our Su family cares a lot about who my brother marries. My grandfather said, it's better to have nothing than to have something substandard." It was probably the first time in Dongfang Yu's life that she met someone who spoke like Su Qingyan. Her pretty face was red, purple, and green. It was as colorful as a color palette. Su Qingchen secretly gave Su Qingyan an admiring look. She put down her teacup and said to Dongfang Yu, "Miss Dongfang, fifth brother is right. If Miss is willing, the Prince Ding mansion will naturally welcome you. I can also ask the prince to personally go to the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain to propose marriage. What do you think?" "No." Dongfang Yu almost screamed. This change in expression instantly made the originally strange and mysterious aura on her disappear without a trace. It was as if she was an ordinary shrewish girl who was dissatisfied with her marriage. "That's an old man. And a servant at that. How can he be good enough for me?" Su Qingchen and Su Qingyan's faces darkened slightly. They did not comment on Dongfang Yu's words. It was this woman who was not good enough for Director Mo. Although Director Mo was not young anymore, his looks were not bad, and he did not look old. He also held the position of the Prince Ding mansion's manager. He was definitely Prince Ding's most trusted aide. It was also because he had no intention of marrying a wife. If he really wanted to marry a wife, there would probably be many families in Glass City who would rush to marry their daughters over. Although it was not very nice to anger a girl like this, Su Qingchen was really annoyed by Dongfang Yu these days. Seeing her like this now, the displeasure on her face became even more obvious. Since that's the case, it looks like Miss Dongfang is not very sincere. Originally, the Prince Ding mansion did not need any capable people to help. "Miss, please leave," Su Qingchen said mildly as she sent the guest off. Dongfang Yu returned in defeat once again. She glared bitterly at Su Qingyan, threw down the words "I won't give up," and turned to leave. Once she left, the study was silent for a moment. Su Qingyan finally could not help but burst into laughter. Looking at her younger brother who was convulsing with laughter, Su Qingchen shook her head mildly and did not say anything. Su Qingyan rubbed his stomach with one hand and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes with the other. He asked, "Big brother, is this woman really from Infinite Boundless Mountain?" "This is too," Su Qingchen said mildly. "Whether she is or not, we will know very soon. But it shouldn't be wrong. That's why people cannot leave the secular world for too long. Otherwise, they might accidentally teach such a weirdo. I wonder if the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain will regret seeing this Miss Dongfang." First young master, fifth young master, Prince and Princess invite you in." At the door, Director Emo was standing there, looking at the two with an indifferent expression. The two people who did not know martial arts looked at each other. Thinking of how they had just insulted fifth young Master Su, they felt a little guilty. "Director Emo, when did you come?" Director Emo said mildly. "Fifth young master said that I would sacrifice myself for the Prince Ding mansion without hesitation. Thank you for your praise." Su Qingyan blushed with shame. Director Emo is too polite. Dongfang Yu's expression was still very ugly when she left the Prince Ding mansion. Along the way, the gazes that were sizing her up made her feel uncomfortable, as if needles were stabbing her. She was not a wooden person who did not feel anything. Of course, she could feel the gazes and words of the people around her. Although many people treated Su Qingchen as a joke, Su Qingchen had suffered an undeserved calamity in this matter. In reality, the person that everyone looked down on and mocked was only Dongfang Yu. But Dongfang Yu only treated this as a trial and error on her path to success. Therefore, she always gritted her teeth and acted as if nothing had happened. But today, being mocked and teased by Su Qingyan so openly, no matter how thick her skin was, she could not hold it in any longer. Chapter 796. She clearly wanted to help the Prince Ding mansion. She didn't believe that Prince Ding and Su Qingchen didn't know how much she and Infinite Boundless Mountain could bring to the Prince Ding mansion. But they just didn't think much of her. For a moment, Dongfang Yu hated Prince Ding for failing to recognize Mount Tai, and hated the Su family for rejecting her. If it were someone else, she would have long since tried to build a good relationship with Infinite Boundless Mountain. But the Prince Ding mansion was so arrogant and rude. But even so, her ambition and willpower would not change. Before leaving the mountain, she would definitely make a contribution that would surpass that of her ancestors. She would definitely help create an emperor who would unify the world and let the whole world know the name of Infinite Boundless Mountain. "Miss Dongfang." Dongfang Yu walked out of the Prince Ding mansion absent-mindedly, and a low male voice came from behind her. Dongfang Yu looked back, only to see Mo Jingli standing not far behind her, looking at her. She immediately restrained her feelings of depression and resentment, and raised her head to look at Mo Jingli calmly. It had to be said that Dongfang Yu's so-called secret technique was pretty good. The moment she raised her head, it was as if she had become a different person. The expression on her beautiful face was indifferent, without a smile, but it gave people a kind of attraction that they couldn't look away from. She was like a fairy bathed in a mysterious glow. For a moment, Mo Jingli even felt his heart skip a beat. "What's the matter, Prince Li?" Mo Jingli calmed himself down and walked up to Dongfang Yu. He lowered his head to look at Dongfang Yu, saying, "Is Miss Dongfang in a bad mood?" Dongfang Yu was not stupid. How could she not see that Mo Jingli was trying to get close to her? But she quickly found that Prince Li's attentiveness didn't make her happy. Instead, she clearly remembered that the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family had mercilessly rejected her. She immediately felt a little bored. She glanced at Mo Jingli, and then lowered her eyes indifferently. As long as he did not look at Dongfang Yu's face and eyes, Mo Jingli's senses were still normal. Naturally, he could feel Dongfang Yu's coldness towards him. Did Miss Dongfang go to the Prince Ding mansion again? Mo Jingli did not mind, and asked as he walked calmly beside Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu stopped, looked at Mo Jingli seriously and asked, "Does Prince Li look down on me?" Mo Jingli shook his head and said, "Why would I? However, I do have some advice for you, so that you won't run into a wall again." Dongfang Yu was startled. "Tell me about it." Mo Jingli said, "Mo Xiuyao's feelings for Yi Li are known throughout the world. Mo Xiuyao will not do anything that might upset Princess Ding." Dongfang Yu nodded and said, "I already know that, so I don't intend to get between Prince Ding and Princess Ding." Mo Jingli continued, "I know that you think Su Qingchen is not bad, but the Su family, especially Su Qingchen, looks gentle and elegant, but I'm afraid that he is even more arrogant than Mo Xiuyao. He will never accept a marriage without feelings. So after so many years, Su Qingchen is over 30 years old, but still hasn't married. Even Mr. Qingyun, Mr. Hongyu and the others can't force him to do anything. If you keep pestering him like this, I'm afraid it will backfire. Dongfengyu's heart skipped a beat, and she said thoughtfully, Is that so? Then what if? What if I make Su Qingchen fall in love with me? Looking at her expression, Mo Jingli somewhat understood what she wanted to say. He smiled faintly and said, Besides, there is one more thing. The Su family has a strict upbringing. Although everyone in the Su family dotes on Princess Ding, so they don't restrict her. It's actually because the family name of the Prince Ding mansion is Yi, and the family name of the bride is Mo, not Su. No matter how talented the women of the Su family are, they have to stay at home to help their husbands and raise their children. Even today's first Madame Su, second Madame Su, and second Madame Su, which one of them wasn't a famous talented woman. But now, he was still unknown to the public. So, if you really want to marry into the Su family, I'm afraid you have to think it over carefully. Dongfenyu glanced at him faintly and said, I know what you are thinking, but I've already chosen the Prince Ding mansion. No matter how much you think about it, it's useless. The smile on Mo Jingli's face suddenly froze. He forced a smile and said, You must be joking, Mississippi. I was just reminding you out of kindness. Dongfenyu snorted softly and ignored Mo Jingli. She went to her temporary residence. Behind her, Mo Jingli looked at her leaving figure, his eyes shining with determination. Dongfenyu didn't stay in the post house with Genom of Gojoseon. Genom of Gojoseon was right. The power of the infinite boundless mountain was indeed spread all over the world. Even in Glass City, they had their stronghold. The place where Dongfenyu stood was a rather spacious empty courtyard in Glass City. When the Mahist army first came to Glass City, many officials and rich businessmen fled to the pass, and many houses in the city were empty. This house had been bought at that time, but no one had moved in until Dongfengyu's arrival. Dongfenyu waved away the servants who came to greet her, and turned back to her room. As soon as she closed the door and turned around, she saw a figure sitting by her bed. The light in the room was dim, and there were layers of gauze. She couldn't see who it was. With a flick of her wrist, 2 short swords appeared in her hands. Dongfenyu pointed at the person and said sternly, Who are you? Without waiting for the person to answer, she pounced forward. The short swords in her hands turned into 2 streaks of silver light that cut through the layers of gauze. You are. A low and slightly hoarse female voice sounded in the room. Dongfenyu was shocked. She hurriedly defended herself and landed on the ground. Seeing the figure walking out, she hurriedly knelt down and bowed. Master. It was a middle-aged woman who looked to be in her 40s or 50s. Her appearance was more outstanding than Dongfengyu's. Although her youth was fleeting, she was still charming. Looking at Dongfenyu indifferently, the woman nodded and said, You're quite bold. Dongfenyu was startled. She said with some panic, Master, did you or do something wrong? The woman stared at Dongfenyu for a while. Then she raised her hand and slapped her hard on the face. Dongfengyu's white jade-like face instantly turned red. But facing the woman's cold and indifferent gaze, she didn't dare to say anything. She only heard the woman say, You dared to sneak down the mountain after eavesdropping on my conversation with the elder? It's fine if you go down the mountain. With your martial arts, no one can bully you when you're outside. But you actually dared to come and find Prince Ding. Who dares to be so bold as you? Infinite Boundless Mountain has never chosen the Prince Ding mansion for so many years. Do you know why? Chapter 797. Hearing her master's words, Dongfenyu could not help but be taken aback. The successors of Infinite Boundless Mountain indeed had nothing to do with the Prince Ding mansion. However, she had not thought too much about it at the time, only taking it that she was not fated with the Prince Ding mansion. After all, Infinite Boundless Mountain was supposed to assist the emperor, and the original Prince Ding mansion could not possibly have produced the previous emperor. It was precisely because of this that she was even more concerned about the Prince Ding mansion. If she could do something that her predecessors had not been able to do, her master would definitely be very happy, and she would also become the most powerful successor of Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, she had never thought that the first thing her master did when she saw her was to give her a vicious slap. Master, covering her reddened face, Dongfang Yu looked at the middle-aged woman, feeling wronged. This middle-aged woman was the current lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain, and also Dongfang Yu's master. Looking at the child, she had raised herself, looking at her with teary eyes. The lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain similarly did not feel good. Dongfang Yu was the most talented disciple she had ever seen. Her secret martial arts and talents were even more outstanding than her own when she was young. She had also always been proud of her disciple. However, she did not know where exactly she had gone wrong. She had clearly already taught her some strategies and methods that she should have learnt, but this disciple seemed to have been born ignorant. Her way of dealing with people, interacting with people, and even her grasp of people's hearts were so childish that it was laughable. In this aspect, she could not even be compared to a child sweeping an infinite boundless mountain. By the time she had discovered these inadequacies, it was already too late. Dongfang Yu's character had already been formed. An intelligent and beautiful girl, who had been pampered since she was young, never having suffered any setbacks or experiences. This made Dongfang Yu completely ignorant of the ways of the world. At the end of the day, this world was still made up of people. If one could not even understand people's hearts, what was the use of being so knowledgeable? Just like this time, Dongfang Yu had only felt a headache from the few words she had spoken with the elder, and had simply thought that Imo Xiaoyao was the most suitable candidate for the successor of Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, she had not thought at all about what kind of person Imo Xiaoyao was, or whether he could be controlled by her. By the time she had rushed over to Glass City after receiving the news, Dongfang Yu had already caused a huge commotion in Glass City. Virtually everyone under the heavens already knew that Infinite Boundless Mountain had chosen Prince Ding as their assistant. Currently, Infinite Boundless Mountain was already riding a tiger, and finding it hard to back down. The middle-aged woman sighed helplessly as she looked at the innocent and aggrieved look of her beloved disciple, whom she had raised from a young age. She leaned over and pulled her up. Dongfang Yu also knew that his master was really angry this time. He stood up and called out to his master nervously. The middle-aged woman pulled her to the side and sat down. Looking at her slightly red eyes, she asked softly, "You've been down the mountain for so long. Did you suffer any grievances?" Dongfang Yu bit the corner of her lips, tears welling up in her eyes. These days, she had suffered more grievances in the Prince Ding mansion than she had in her entire life. Previously, she had still been able to encourage herself by saying that everything was for the sake of Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, that slap from her master just now had more or less made her understand that her previous actions might have been wrong. The middle-aged woman said helplessly, "It's master's fault. Master did not teach you well." "No." Dongfang Yu shook her head and said, "It's my fault. I acted impulsively and made master worry." No matter what, Dongfang Yu still respected her master, who had raised her from a young age. Seeing her master blaming herself so much, she hurriedly shook her head and said. The middle-aged woman patted the back of her hand and said softly, "All right, tell master what happened these days. Master will think of a way." Ever since they had discovered that they could not change Dongfang Yu's character, Infinite Boundless Mountain had already thought of a remedy. Originally, they had not intended to let Dongfang Yu come down the mountain alone to gain experience. However, they did not expect Dongfang Yu to act first and report later. Although the current situation was a little tricky, it was not impossible to solve. Only then did Dongfang Yu slowly explain in detail what had happened after she had left the mountain. Although she did not know the ways of the world, her martial arts and the careful guidance of Infinite Boundless Mountain for more than 10 years were not fake. Therefore, after leaving the mountain, Dongfang Yu did not suffer. She directly went to Genom of Gojoseon and Enchanting. After Enchanting confirmed her thoughts and identity, he took care of the rest. She only needed an appropriate opportunity to appear in front of Prince Ding. On the contrary, after seeing Prince Ding, She suffered a lot of grievances and suffering. Humans were selfish. Although it was her own child's fault. After hearing the Prince Ding Mansion's merciless rejection and ridicule of Dongfangyu, the middle-aged woman could not help but be angry. Her beautiful face that still retained its charm seemed to be covered by a layer of ice in an instant. Good. What a good Prince Ding Mansion. How dare you look down on Infinite Boundless Mountain? The people of Infinite Boundless Mountain had never thought that their power was inferior to the Prince Ding Mansion. The reason why they had never provoked the people of Prince Ding Mansion was that the character and ability of the past Prince Ding were very difficult to grasp. However, this did not mean that they would feel that they were inferior to the Prince Ding Mansion because of this. There was also the Su family. Not only were there records of Infinite Boundless Mountain in the handwritten notes of the Su family's ancestors, the handwritten notes of the ancestors of Infinite Boundless Mountain were also recorded in the handwritten notes of the Prince Ding Mansion. This was the second time that the Su family had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain. Master, what should I do now? Dongfangyu asked a little nervously. She was also a person with dignity. If she could, she would not be willing to give up Su Qingchen like this. After being mercilessly ridiculed by the Su family's brothers, Dongfangyu's obsession with the Prince Ding Mansion had actually been slowly transferred to Su Qingchen. Originally, she wanted to marry Su Qingchen in order to get close to the Prince Ding Mansion. Mo Xiuyao was the person she would assist in the future, since he was unwilling to marry her. Of course she would not force her future monarch to be unhappy. However, Su Qingchen's unhesitant rejection and Su Qingyan's ridicule were not things that Dongfangyu could accept. The middle-aged woman lowered her eyebrows in deep thought. She sighed slightly and said, "Since you have already done this, if you change your mind at the last minute, how can Infinite Boundless Mountain still have the face to stand in the world?" In fact, if it was really Dongfangyu who changed her mind and looked down on the Prince Ding Mansion, it would be fine. However, almost everyone in the world now knew that it was the Prince Ding Mansion that looked down on Dongfangyu. If Infinite Boundless Mountain changed its stance and supported someone else at this time, it would confirm this rumor. Even if they really did choose someone else in the future, their status and prestige in the eyes of the other party would be greatly reduced. Hearing her master say this, Dongfangyu's eyes could not help but light up slightly. "Master, what should we do now?" The middle-aged woman snorted softly and said, "Tomorrow I will personally go to the Prince Ding Mansion to visit Prince Ding and the first young master of the Su family. Don't worry, Master will not let anyone bully you." Dongfangyu's beautiful face could not help but reveal a pure and happy smile. "You knows that Master is the best." Here, Dongfangyu and the middle-aged woman were currently discussing how to deal with the Prince Ding Mansion. On the other side, the Prince Ding Mansion had also received the news that the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain had entered the city. Infinite Boundless Mountain's deep roots and shocking strength elsewhere. However, Glass City was under the absolute control of the Prince Ding Mansion. It was already not easy for Infinite Boundless Mountain to be able to set up a few spies in Glass City. For something as big as the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain entering Glass City, it was basically impossible for him to do it without anyone knowing. Therefore, when the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain thought that he was infallible and wanted to negotiate with the Prince Ding Mansion for his disciple, the Prince Ding Mansion had also opened up a massive net towards Infinite Boundless Mountain. Chapter 798. In the Prince Ding Mansion, Mo Xiuyao casually passed the information he had just obtained to Su Qingchen. Smiling, he said, "Brother Qingchen, the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain has come. Does this count as—" Before he had finished speaking, Yili sitting beside him pinched him viciously on the waist. Yili did not hold back in the slightest in this pinch. It was just that her actions were so secretive that Su Qingchen and Su Qingyan, sitting opposite her, did not notice it. Therefore, the two of them only looked strangely at Mo Xiuyao, who had stopped halfway through his words. his face contorting slightly before he smiled fawningly at Yi Li. Having known Imo Xiaoyao for so many years, Su Qingchen also knew that Imo Xiaoyao's mouth would not be able to spit out any good words. Not wanting to get to the bottom of it, he wanted him to finish speaking, lest he angered himself for no reason. Silently reading the secret letter that Imo Xiaoyao had handed over, Su Qingchen frowned slightly. This Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain is not as easy to deal with as Dongfang Yu. Is there any news from Genom of Gojoseon's side? Yi Li said. Genom of Gojoseon's side does not know much either. They only know that this generation's Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain is called Dongfang Hui, and can be considered the grandniece of Lei Zhenting's grandmother. Ever since Lei Zhenting's father succeeded the throne, the Emperor of Shiling's interactions with Infinite Boundless Mountain have gradually decreased. Therefore, they do not know much about this either. Imo Xiaoyao said. It should be that the Emperor of Shiling's understanding of Infinite Boundless Mountain has decreased. However, Infinite Boundless Mountain's control over the Emperor of Shiling's side has probably not decreased. Otherwise, Lei Zhenting would not be so wary of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Su Qingchen nodded, saying, Prince is right. With Dongfang Yu's intelligence, being able to accurately find Lei Zhenting the moment he descended the mountain was sufficient to show that Infinite Boundless Mountain's control and understanding of the outside world had never weakened. I reckon that Lei Zhenting's inability to replace the Emperor of Shilling all these years is also related to Infinite Boundless Mountain. Compared to the weak and useless Emperor of Shilling, Lei Zhenting was definitely an extremely difficult person to control. Letting him ascend the throne was clearly not in line with Infinite Boundless Mountain's interests. Imo Xiaoyao nodded his head in satisfaction. If that's the case, I believe that Lei Zhenting is sincere about cooperating with us. A true expert would never be willing to submit to the control of others. As for Lei Zhenting, there was no doubt that he was one of the top experts in the world. What are Prince's plans? Su Qingchen asked. Imo Xiaoyao laughed coldly. Take drastic measures. Only by completely eliminating Infinite Boundless Mountain would they be able to prevent any future troubles. Even if Infinite Boundless Mountain did not take the initiative to look for the Prince Ding mansion this time, or even completely did not participate in this chaotic struggle for hegemony, when Imo Xiaoyao was free, he would also go find trouble with them. Just because they did not provoke the Prince Ding mansion now did not mean that they would not do so in the future. With such an organization that seemed to be independent of the world, yet also deeply rooted in every corner of the world, as long as one was in power, they would definitely not like it. In the past, it had nothing to do with the Prince Ding mansion, but that might not be the case in the future. Su Qingchen clearly felt that Imo Xiaoyao's idea was not bad. After pondering for a moment, she frowned slightly, saying, In so many years, no one has been able to find the true location of Infinite Boundless Mountain. I suspect that there is a massive natural formation in the vicinity of Infinite Boundless Mountain. I'm afraid that the Emperor Shiling's men will not be able to find it. Currently, Infinite Boundless Mountain was under the jurisdiction of Lei Zhenting, and the Mahist army would not be able to easily enter and leave it. Formation. Those who had fought in wars would all have a certain level of understanding towards formations. But if Su Qingchen were to name it as such, then this formation would definitely exceed the capabilities of the average person. Otherwise, Lei Zhenting would be able to deal with it himself, being a master of the art of war. Su Qingchen thought for a moment, then said, If it really comes to that, I would like to personally go and take a look. Imo Xiaoyao did not object. Although young Master Qingchen had always been modest and did not have much understanding of the art of war, the so-called formations and the art of war were two completely different domains when one reached a high level. Since young Master Qingchen was so confident, Imo Xiaoyao naturally believed in his abilities in the field of formations as well. As for Imo Xiaoyao himself, he was actually more proficient in planning and strategy on the battlefield, and rarely used formations. As for Yi Li, those single-word long snake formation, 3-flower formation, 9 palace 8 trigrams formation were not much different from heavenly scriptures to her. Su Qingyan followed them to listen, and said with a smile, Brother-in-law Prince Ding, big brother. You should first think about how to deal with the master of infinite boundless mountain. I always feel that a woman who can call out a disciple like Dongfang Yu definitely has a bad temper. And that Dongfang Yu, I'm sure that she has taken a liking to big brother. Fifth young master Su had improved a lot in these few years under Su Qingbai, especially after Su Qingbai went to the Western Tomb. It could be said that he had single-handedly supported the farming in the north and the resettlement of hundreds of thousands of refugees. It was as if he was going to be able to take charge of a region on his own. This made Mo Xiuyao very satisfied. The young masters of the Su family were the kind of people who would get more and more powerful the more pressure you gave them. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use all his strength to squeeze them dry. Su Qingchen glanced at her brother indifferently. Su Qingyan suddenly felt a chill on the top of his head and lowered it pitifully. What he said was true. Big Brother had been an immortal for a long time, and the people he usually interacted with were all scheming people, or people close to him, who respected him like a god. How could he understand the thoughts of a girl? Su Qingyan had spent a lot of time mingling with the ordinary people of the lower class. His understanding of the thoughts of ordinary girls was obviously much more thorough than that of an immortal like Su Qingchen. Big brother, don't blame me for not warning you if you don't listen to me and attract a bad girl. Su Qingyan thought gloatingly in his heart. The four of them were talking about Infinite Boundless Mountain when the guard outside reported that Prince Li had requested an audience. Su Qingyan could not help but be amused and said with a smile, "Isn't Mo Jingli trying to curry favor with Dongfang Yu? I reckon that kind of arrogant beauty is hard to please." Mo Jingli must have been met with a nose full of dust. For a girl like Dongfang Yu, if she took a liking to you, you could not reject her. If she did not like you, you could also not get close to her. If Mo Jingli wanted to curry favor with her, he would only be asking for trouble. Previously, when Dongfang Yu had just left the Prince Ding mansion, she had a chance encounter with Mo Jingli. Everyone in the Prince Ding mansion naturally knew about this, but they did not care. At this time, there were more than one person in Glass City who had the same thoughts as Mo Jingli. Guess what he came here for? Su Qingyan asked curiously. It could be said that everyone knew how much Mo Jingli hated Mo Xiuyao. If there was no extremely important matter, he would definitely not set foot in the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiuyao leaned against the back of the chair, stroking his chin and smiling lazily. I think he came to give a gift. Give a gift? Su Qingyan's eyes widened. Mo Jingli would give a gift to Prince Ding? It was possible that he would give him a few bottles of poison and stuff them into his mouth. The moment Mo Xiuyao said this, even young Master Qingchen's expression changed slightly, his handsome eyes moving slightly. Are you sure he would give you something so important? Mo Xiuyao smiled complacently. I said before that no treasure in this world can compare to a lack of successors. From the start, Mo Jingli had no choice but to agree to I. He just could not swallow his anger. Look, it has only been a few days, and the thing has already arrived. It must have been I who mentioned it, and he immediately sent someone back to retrieve it. Chapter 799. Yili raised her eyebrows and said, "Giving away Dechu State's national treasure to someone else, Mo Jingli wouldn't be able to explain it to the court, right? What does this have to do with I?" Mo Xiuyao blinked and asked with a smile. The three people present were silent. It really didn't have anything to do with it. When Mo Jingli entered the room, his entire body was surrounded by a cold wind. Unfortunately, the four people present were not cowards. Instead, it scared the attendants holding the boxes behind him quite a bit. When they placed the boxes on the table, their hands were trembling. Dismissing the attendants, Mo Jingli stared at Mo Xiuyao and said, "I've brought the thing you wanted. Where is the thing I want?" Mo Xiuyao smiled indifferently and said, "Since King Li is straightforward, I will naturally keep my word. Brother Qingchen, take a look." Although the difference between a treasure and a fake was not big, The actual value was as different as heaven and earth. Su Qingchen nodded and stood up. She walked in front of a long brocade box and gently opened it. Inside was a snow-white jade zither. The body of the zither was as white as snow, and its luster was as gentle as jade. A blood-red phoenix was carved on the head of the zither. Since ancient times, the best zither material was paulownia wood. A zither made of jade was unheard of. Without mentioning anything else, such a large piece of top-quality white jade was extremely hard to find. Not to mention, jade was not as good as paulownia wood. To carve it into a zither was even more difficult. And this jade zither was not only beautiful in appearance, but the sound was also peerless. And in hundreds and thousands of years, there was only one zither made of white jade. It was known as an immortal zither tool. Su Qingchen's elegant and calm eyes flashed with a hint of joy. Her fingertips gently moved, and ethereal sounds of the zither came from her fingertips. Even if it was just a few random notes, it was extremely pleasing to the ears. It really is the phoenix zither. Su Qingchen stopped and softly praised. Su Qingyan looked at the white jade zither in the brocade box in shock. For a moment, he was so shocked by this shocking news that he couldn't recover. Phoenix zither. Phoenix zither. Was this the phoenix zither that had been passed down from generation to generation for several hundred years? As for the others, Su Qingyan unconsciously held his breath and stared blankly as Su Qingchen's slender fingers reached for another box. There was a white dress in the box. The snow-threaded dress didn't look very beautiful. It could even be said that it wasn't particularly eye-catching. The translucent white gauze was woven with a looming snow lotus pattern. Whether it was the phoenix brocade or the hibiscus brocade, which was once known as the best brocade in the world, the water cloud muslin had countless styles and colors that could compete with it. However, the value of the snow-threaded robe wasn't in its beauty, but its unbreakable defense. Su Qingchen looked up at Emo Xiaoyao and asked with a smile, "Prince, do you want to try it yourself?" "Of course I have to try." How could he dare to let Li Li use something that he hadn't tried before? Perhaps it wouldn't be a defensive treasure, but would instead become the culprit that injured Li Li. Emo Xiaoyao didn't stand on ceremony. He waited until Su Qingchen left before standing up. A silver light flashed at his waist, and the white dress in the box was lifted up. After a few more slashes, the sword light disappeared into his waist, and the white gauze robe gently fell into his hand. Emo Xiaoyao nodded in satisfaction. As expected of the thousand snow-threaded robe that is said to be unbreakable. Not only can it block sharp swords, it can also block energy. Even with Emo Xiaoyao's profound skill, the thousand snow-threaded robe was not damaged in the slightest. From this, it could be seen that its defensive power was heaven-defying. Emo Xiaoyao. Emo Jingli's face was darker than the bottom of a pot. To use a sword so casually in front of him was too arrogant. Emo Xiaoyao said with a smile, "Since you've given it to its eyes, can't I cut a few of them to try?" Emo Jingli gritted his teeth, but didn't say anything. Emo Xiaoyao took the snow-threaded robe to Yi Li in satisfaction and said with a smile, "Li, do you like it? I'll get someone to modify it and make it into a beautiful new robe. Can Li try it?" Actually, among the treasures, the one he valued the most was this robe that was useless to normal people. As for the others, even though he refused to give it to Su Qingchen when she asked for the phoenix zither, it was just a joke. Yi Li also knew Emo Xiaoyao's intentions. She nodded with a smile and said, "Very good. It's not bad even if you don't modify it." Emo Xiaoyao's expression became even more joyful. He said with a smile, "As long as Li Li likes it." The remaining two treasures, the country-suppressing seal and the incineration sword, were also the real deal. Actually, Emo Jingli had interacted with Emo Xiaoyao countless times since he was young. He really didn't have the courage to use a fake to fool him. But in the end, the incineration sword was taken back by Su Qingchen for research because it had too much killing intent. It was taken away along with the phoenix zither. Emo Xiaoyao didn't care. With his current martial arts, there was no need for him to use any divine weapons. In the end, Prince Ding spent a lot of effort to extort Emo Jingli and only got the country-suppressing seal for himself. Mo Xiaoyao casually played with the country suppressing seal that was about the same size as the imperial jade seal. He looked at it left and right but couldn't see the value of it. He then threw it to Su Qingyan, who was eyeing it covetously from the side. Su Qingyan cheered as he held the country suppressing seal and looked at it fondly. Mo Jingli glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. The treasures in these bastards' hands were all his. Was it really okay to study it in front of him, the original owner? Mo Xiaoyao, this is what I want, Mo Jingli said in a low voice. Mo Xiaoyao casually waved his hand, and a small object flew towards Mo Jingli's face. Mo Jingli raised his hand to catch it, and felt the web between his thumb and forefinger go numb. He was secretly shocked at Mo Xiaoyao's profound cultivation. At the same time, he gripped the porcelain bottle in his hand tightly. He opened it and sniffed it. After confirming that it was the same thing you gave him, he secretly sighed in relief. Mo Xiaoyao looked at him from the corner of his eyes and said, "Don't worry. I can't be bothered to make fake medicine for you. Whether you have a house full of descendants or no descendants has nothing to do with I." Mo Jingli gritted his teeth, but he couldn't help but admit that Mo Xiaoyao was speaking the truth. Mo Xiaoyao looked at him and said slowly, "There's no reason for you to hate I so much. I wasn't the one who poisoned you. I wasn't the one who hid your son. And I didn't even steal the antidote. I just happened to have it, so what's wrong with me casually taking it? Or do you expect I to help the world without expecting anything in return?" Mo Jingli stared at him and said coldly, "I will remember what happened this time." "As you wish," Mo Xiaoyao said with a smile. In any case, Mo Jingli would hate him regardless of what happened this time. Then why should he be constrained by this? Naturally, he would take as many things as he could get. It would be a waste to leave them in Mo Jingli's hands anyway. Su Qingyan raised his head and looked pitifully at Mo Jingli as he played with the country suppressing seal. He really wanted to tell him, "Princely, you should leave quickly. Otherwise, you'd lose so many treasures and still be angry to the point of vomiting blood." He didn't need to say anything. Mo Jingli had been trampled on by a certain person for many years. He glared fiercely at Mo Xiaoyao, then left in a huff. Chapter 800. This morning, the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family brought the two one-month-old babies to Master Qingyan's courtyard to chat and laugh. After the birthday celebration, Mo Xiaoyao also came back from the border. Master Qingyan couldn't stand the noise in Li City and was worried about the students of Lishan Academy, so he prepared to leave the city and return to Lishan Academy. Everyone couldn't stop him and could only come over to eat breakfast with Master Qingyan before sending him out of the city. Mr. Qingyan was also very fond of the two newborn babies. Looking at little Lin, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, Master Qingyan asked, "Did you choose the names of the two children?" Yili smiled. "Aren't they waiting for grandfather to give them good names?" Master Qingyan shook his head. "How can there be parents like you? The names of the three children were all given by other people. You're lazy." Yili smiled. "How can grandfather be considered as other people? It's their good fortune to have grandfather give them names." Even in the Su family, only the two uncles and eldest brothers' names were given by grandfather. Mo Xiaobao lay beside Master Qingyan's legs and nodded. "Mother is right. The names grandfather gave are good." Although Mo Xiaobao was given a nickname that wasn't very beautiful by his father, it was fortunate that his name was still able to support the situation. Mo Yu Chen, no matter how you look at it, was more impressive than his father's name. So the name grandfather gave him must be praised. Mo Xiaoyao felt a bit wronged, although he knew that Master Qingyan gave a name that many people begged for. But could it be that the names he gave weren't good? Alright, he was a bit slow in naming his daughter. As for his son, why would a boy need such a good name? Having the ability was the most important. Glancing at Mo Xiaoyao's wronged appearance, Yili was expressionless. Thinking of the pile of papers in the study about her daughter's name, her head hurt. Mo Xiaoyao really didn't have the talent for naming. Master Qingyan lowered his head and thought, "Since Yu Chen has the word Yu, Then how about Lin or name Feng? Su Hongyu nodded and smiled. Yufeng? Father had chosen a good name. Prince Lear, what do you think? Emo Xiaoyao didn't have any objections to his son's name. Yi Li also nodded with a smile and said, naturally, the name given by grandfather is a good name. Don't look at how simple the word Feng was. As if it wasn't as domineering and noble as Yu Chen. Grandpa must have hoped that little Lin would grow up to have a carefree personality. After all, no matter what happened to the Prince Ding mansion in the future, if there were no accidents, the one to inherit the Prince Ding mansion should be Mo Xiaobao. Grandpa naturally didn't want the tragedy of brothers fighting against each other to happen to them. In that case, little Lin's name shall be Yufeng. What should our little princess be called? Qin Zheng asked with a smile. Mr. Qingyan lowered his head and thought for a moment. He said, how about Yuya? Yuya? Both Yu Chun and Yufeng follow the word Yu? Su Qingchen asked. Mr. Qingyan shook his head and said, no, the word Yu is too strong and domineering for a girl. It's not beautiful. Mo Xiaoyao carefully savored it, and also felt that he couldn't find anything bad about it. Before his daughter was born, he had secretly thought of countless names. It wasn't necessarily that there weren't better names. However, he looked at this and that, and couldn't choose one no matter how hard he tried. The name that Mr. Qingyan came up with was both pleasant to hear and artistic. It also didn't disgrace his cute little princess. Nodding his head, Mo Xiaoyao pinched the little princess' sleeping face in Yi Li's hands and said with a smile, okay, in the future, I's little princess will be called Yuya. The names that other people couldn't decide on for a long time, Mr. Qingyan came up with them in a short while. Yi Li also let out a sigh of relief. Even if she came up with a name, she might not be able to come up with a better name than Grandpa. As for Mo Xiaoyao, his daughter's name was fine, but his son's name couldn't be counted on. Now that it was solved in one go, the two babies both got good names. Naturally, it couldn't be better. I've been very busy this month. I didn't even manage to hold the two children's 1-month-old banquet. Next year, when they turn 1, we can't be so aggrieved. Looking at his two little great-grandsons, Mr. Qingyan said with some regret. At this age, he didn't care that much about formalities. However, because of his own birthday, he had neglected the two children's 1-month-old banquet. This made Mr. Qingyan feel some regret. He would rather not hold a birthday banquet than let the two children suffer. Yi Li lightly patted little Xener's swaddling clothes and said with a smile, Grandpa, don't worry. When they turn 1 next year, I'm still waiting for Grandpa to personally give them a birthday gift. Moreover, there are too many people coming this time. These two have just been born. It's not a big deal to hold such a big banquet. They can't withstand the torment. That's why we all slacked off. There was a saying among the people that children with a light fate couldn't bear too much good fortune. However, the little heir and princess of the Prince Ding mansion naturally didn't have this kind of misgivings. Yi Li said this to comfort Mr. Qingyan. Secondly, it was true. If there was another 1-month-old banquet, there was no doubt that the newly born twins would be pushed to the teeth of the storm. In this case, it was better to save it. Speaking of this, Mr. Qingyan also thought of something and asked, I heard that the successor of the Boundless Mountain has appeared. Although everyone was determined to hide the annoying things outside from Mr. Qingyan, it was impossible to not disclose any information. After a few days, it was not strange for Mr. Qingyan to hear some words. At the mention of this, eldest Madame Su's face was full of anger. She said, Father, you don't know. That Miss Dongfang is really a little. Our Su family can't let such a woman into our family. The last time they met, eldest Madame Su was really angry. She went to see Dongfang Yu with full of hope and joy. However, the result was like a bucket of ice water poured on her head. Her heart was cold, and she felt depressed. After marrying into the Su family for decades, Mrs. Su was famous for her good temper. But even so, she was so angry that she called Su Qingchen over and scolded him fiercely. Of course, the most wronged person was Mr. Qingchen, who suffered from the undeserved disaster from the beginning to the end. Mr. Qingyan raised his eyebrows with interest. Oh, Miss Dongfang wants to marry into the Su family? Su Qingyan immediately volunteered to tell Mr. Qingyan all kinds of stories of Miss Dongfang chasing Mr. Qingchen. Fifth young master Su's eloquence was like a lotus flower. He described Miss Dongfang's infatuation with Mr. Qingchen vividly. He completely forgot to see his eldest brother's cold smile. Fifth young master Su's words were interesting. Mr. Qingyan was also interested. In the end he commented, "This little girl is somewhat interesting. Qingchen, what do you say?" "Grandfather," Su Qingchen called helplessly, "I have no intention of getting married." Mr. Qingyan stroked his snow-white beard and smiled. "You are not young anymore. You should think about it. However, forget about the girl of the boundless mountain." "Grandfather, have you seen the people of the Green Cloud Mountain?" Su Qingyan asked curiously. Last time when the successor of the boundless mountain came down the mountain, Mr. Qingyan was still young. However, Mr. Qingyan became famous very early. At that time, he was already famous all over the world. It was very likely that he had seen the successor of the boundless mountain. Mr. Qingyan shook his head with a smile. The person who came down from the boundless mountain this time was the mistress of the Genom of Gojoseon, the former emperor of Xiling, the Empress Dowager. However, I have seen several other people of the boundless mountain. Chapter 801. Are there other people from Infinite Boundless Mountain moving about at the foot of the mountain? Su Qingyan asked curiously. Su Qingchen said, "Since Infinite Boundless Mountain has such a large power, it is impossible that no one has been paying attention to it for decades. Naturally, there are people in charge of it in secret. It is just that it is much more secretive than the previous generations." Mr. Qingyan nodded. "That's right. These people have no fame in the world at all, and do not attract any attention at all. Some even die of old age without doing anything in their entire lives. No different from ordinary citizens. However, there are many capable people among them who are willing to remain silent. From this, it can be seen that Infinite Boundless Mountain's methods of controlling their subordinates are definitely exceptional." "But that Dongfang Yu," fifth young master Su was a little doubtful. That Dongfang Yu might be more knowledgeable than him. But if it was a battle of wits, he really could not see anything special about her. Mr. Qingyan shook his head. This Miss Dongfang indeed does not seem like a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, the more she is like this, the more powerful the person Infinite Boundless Mountain will send to help her in secret. Mo Xiaoyao smiled. "Isn't that powerful? The Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain, Dongfang Hui, has already personally come to Glass City. I reckon it won't be long before they come asking for an audience." "Dongfang Hui?" Su Hongyu frowned slightly, asking. Yili nodded. "That's right. Has first uncle heard of this name before?" Su Hongyu was silent for a moment before saying mildly, "I do know someone called Dongfang Hui." Yili could not help but look at Mo Shuyao beside her. Coincidentally, Mo Shuyao also looked over. The two were silent. From first uncle's tone, it did not seem like they had an ordinary relationship. If it was really as they thought, then it would really be a huge mess of melodrama. If the two of them could tell, the others would naturally be able to as well. However, no one asked in detail. Lady Su, Qin Zheng and the others had always only cared about the matters of the inner residence, and would not ask about it. After breakfast, Su Qifeng and Su Qingzi sent Mr. Qingyan out of the city, before everyone returned to the study to continue their conversation. Originally, Su Qingyan also wanted to send Master Qingyan out of the city, but for some reason, he changed his mind and said that he had something to do and would leave the city tomorrow to accompany his grandfather. Then, he shamelessly followed Master Qingyan into the study. "Father, what's your relationship with Dongfang Hui?" Fifth young master Su was the first to lose his cool. The other three people secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. If Su Qingyan hadn't asked on their behalf, even young Master Qing Chen wouldn't have had the nerve to ask his father such a private question. Su Hongyu was stunned. He glared at Su Qingyan and scolded him with a smile. "What nonsense are you thinking? We only knew each other when we were young. Looking at the expressions of the other three, it was clear that they had the same idea as Su Qingyan. Mr. Hongyu was so angry that he slapped Su Qingyan's head in annoyance. It wasn't that they were narcissistic and thought that every woman would have feelings for Su Hongyu. Though Master Hongyu was already in his prime, he was still lean and handsome. Just by looking at the appearances of Su Qingchen and his brothers, one could imagine how handsome Master Hongyu had been when he was young. Though the marriage of the Su family brothers had almost become a problem these past few years, it definitely wasn't because they weren't well off. On the contrary, it was because they were just too outstanding. There were very few ladies who could match up to them. Su Qingyan didn't mind being scolded by his father. Compared to such a small scolding, he was more worried that his father's confidant would suddenly appear, or even a concubine. Not to mention what his mother would think, or what his brothers would think. His grandfather would break his father's legs first. So you're saying that the time of Infinite Boundless Mountain's entry into the world is actually rather random? Su Qingchen raised his brows and asked. Su Hongyu said mildly. They say that they enter the world once every 60 years, but how could it be so strict? If it's not their turn, then wouldn't those who enter after 60 years be stuck in the mountain forever? No matter how intelligent a frog in a well is, it's useless. It's just that they don't do it so openly. I met Dongfang Hui 27 or 28 years ago. At that time, she was only 16 or 17 years old, having just come down from the mountain to temper herself. What does eldest uncle think of this Dongfang Hui? Yili asked. Su Hongyu thought for a moment, then said. That was because she was still young, and was still rather innocent. However, her methods, impatience, and decisiveness were all not bad. At the very least, it's definitely not something that girl called Dongfang you can compare to. After so many years, I can't say for sure what exactly has happened. However, we must not underestimate her. Su Qingchen nodded. Many thanks for father's reminder. Your son knows. Indeed, just after noon, Chief Steward Mo came to report that the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain had come to visit, and that he had specially said that he had come to visit the first young master of the Su family, Su Qingchen. From this faint special explanation, it could be seen that the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain were a little displeased with first young master Su. Su Qingchen, who had originally intended to push the matter to Mo Xiuyao, also followed along to the front hall to meet the guest. Mo Xiuyao held Yi Li's hand as they walked into the hall, side by side, and saw a middle-aged woman standing in the middle of the hall with her hands clasped behind her back, admiring a painting. She didn't sit down, and Dongfang Yu beside her naturally didn't dare to sit down either. There were also quite a few young men and women standing by the side. Before Mo Xiuyao had even entered, he could already feel that although these people looked young, they were all experts that were hard to come by. In comparison, in terms of martial arts, Dongfang Hui was actually the weakest. However, even so, these young men and women still stood by the side with their heads bowed respectfully. Even when Mo Xiuyao and the others entered, they didn't raise their heads to look at them or say a word. Evidently, they were extremely respectful, even reverent, towards Dongfang Hui. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Dongfang Hui turned to look at the door, smiling mildly. Prince Ding, Princess Ding. Nice to meet you. Yili smiled mildly, nodding. Lady Fong of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Nice to meet you. Lady, please sit down. Is there anything wrong with the Prince Ding mansion? Dongfang Hui said with a smile. Princess, you're too serious. Please forgive me for intruding. Mo Xiuyao held Yi Li's hand and sat down on the main seat. Dongfang Hui then sat down on the first seat on the right. Su Qingchen strolled over and sat down opposite her. Dongfang Hui looked at Su Qingchen sitting opposite her, and a faint fluctuation flashed through her eyes. She raised her head and smiled at Yi Li. You are as young and ignorant, so she acts recklessly. These days, she has caused a lot of trouble for the Prince Ding mansion. Prince and Princess, please forgive her. Yi Li smiled and glanced at Dongfang Yu, who was standing behind Dongfang Hui, and said with a smile, Lady Fong, you're too serious. Miss Dongfang is a guest. It's our Prince Ding mansion that has neglected Miss Dongfang. Please don't blame us. Dongfang Hui frowned slightly, looking at Yi Li with a bit more admiration. Looking at the well-behaved Dongfang Yu beside her, she couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If Yu had Princess Ding's exquisite heart silk, how could things end like this? Looking sideways at Su Qingchen for a while, Dongfang Hui asked, "Is this the eldest son of the Su family, young Master Qingchen?" Chapter 802. Su Qingchen nodded, cupped his hands and smiled. "That's me. Greetings, Madame Dongfang." Dongfang Hui nodded and sighed. Young Master Qingchen is so elegant. He really deserves the title of the #1 young master in the world. Mr. Hong Yu should be happy to have such a son. Madam, you flatter me. Su Qingchen was still smiling, but looking at Dongfang Hui, he was even more satisfied. At the beginning, Dongfang Hui only wanted to protect the face of the infinite boundless mountain and clean up the mess for Dongfang Yu. Now, she really felt that it would be good if Su Qingchen could become the son-in-law of the infinite boundless mountain. She had no children. She had raised Dongfang Yu from a young age. She had probably spent more effort than many biological parents. Naturally, she also hoped that her disciple could have a good marriage. However, Dongfang Yu didn't understand the ways of the world. No matter who she married, her life would be difficult. Even if she had the infinite boundless mountain behind her, she couldn't guarantee that her husband would love her sincerely. If she was married and raised up, her life wouldn't be better than being a widow. But the Su family was different. As long as Dongfang Yu married into the Su family wouldn't mistreat her. Unfortunately, Dongfang Hui didn't know that Dongfang Yu had already offended the first madam of the Su family, young Master Qingchen's mother. Looking at this situation, Yi Li sighed softly in her heart. Why was Dongfang Hui looking at her elder brother like a son-in-law? The hall was silent for a moment. Yi Li asked, "Madam, what brings you here?" Dongfang Hui smiled faintly. "I haven't gone down the mountain for decades. This time, my disappointing disciple ran down the mountain. I had to go down the mountain to find her and look around. Yu has been spoiled by me since young. If she offended you, please forgive her." Yi Li smiled faintly. "Of course not. Miss Dongfang is talented and beautiful. Madam, you are so lucky." Looking at Yi Li's behavior, Dongfang Hui knew that it wouldn't be easy to make the Su family agree to marry Dongfang Yu. After pondering for a moment, Dongfang Hui sighed softly and said, "Princess consort, Yu is to blame for this matter. Over these years, infinite boundless mountain's population has dwindled. Originally, I had not intended to let Yu descend the mountain. While infinite boundless mountain was a little cold and desolate, it was still much better than being swept into these chaotic times. Who would have thought that the child would run down the mountain without us noticing? But now that things had come to this, Yu was a girl after all. I don't ask for her to bring glory to infinite boundless mountain. I only hope that she can marry peacefully. Henceforth, I'll be a good wife to my husband and raise my children, living a peaceful life." It had to be said that as a master, as the person in charge of infinite boundless mountain, Dongfang Hui's efforts towards this disciple of hers were extremely moving. But the problem was that the Su family and Su Qingchen had to bear the consequences of helping her. Whether it was for the Su family, for her brother, or for the layout of the Prince Ding mansion, Yi Li could only bite her lip. Looking at Dongfang Yu, Yi Li smiled. It is also Miss Dongfang's fortune to have such a good master as Madam. Miss Dongfang is as beautiful as a flower, skilled in both the pen and the sword. She is also from a prestigious family. If Madam wishes to take in a son-in-law, how could the heroes of the world not hear the news and come?" Dongfang Hui's smile faded slightly as she looked at Yi Li, asking, "Then what about the first young master of the Su family?" Yi Li paused for a moment, before replying calmly, "Elder brother's marriage is naturally decided by grandfather, first uncle and first aunt. While this junior is Princess Ding, I am still a junior. How could I dare to act on my own accord?" Dongfang Hui understood that Yi Li's words at least expressed her attitude. The Prince Ding mansion would definitely not make use of Su Qingchen's marriage for the sake of infinite boundless mountain's power. In fact, there was already a hidden message within. The Prince Ding mansion was unwilling to have a marriage alliance with infinite boundless mountain. As such, Dongfang Hui's opinion of Emo Xiuyao rose a little. After all, in this world, Emo Xiuyao was probably the only one who could resist such a temptation and push away such a powerful ally. Dongfang Hui frowned, saying, Princess Ding means that this matter needs to be discussed with Mr. Hong Yu and Madam personally? Yi Li smiled. The marriage of a child naturally needs to be discussed with their parents. It was not that Yi Li wanted to push the trouble to Su Hongyu and Madame Su, but that she indeed did not have the right to reject on behalf of Su Qingchen. Even if she rejected on behalf of Su Qingchen, Dongfang Hui would still bring up Su Hongyu and Madame Su. After all, even if one traveled the world, there was no way that a cousin could make the decision for her cousin's marriage. Dongfang Hui looked a little helpless as she asked Su Qingchen, What does young Master Qingchen say? While Yu was in the wrong in this matter, she is still a girl at the end of the day. I am also a girl, and naturally know that it is not easy to be a girl. Su Qingchen raised his eyebrows. Dongfang Hui's matter reminded him that after these days, Dongfang Yu's reputation had already been ruined. If he did not marry Dongfang Yu, it would be irresponsible. Su Qingchen glanced sideways at Emo Xiuyao, who was sitting leisurely beside him, and said lightly, Madam, you are exaggerating. Originally, Miss Dongfang said that she was going to marry into the Prince Ding mansion. This was heard by all the dignitaries present at that time. Madam, you also know that the rules of the Su family are that we do not ask for a girl to be beautiful and talented. We only ask for a clean, gentle, and virtuous reputation. Moreover, with Miss Dongfang's character and talent, there is no need to worry that there won't be any heroes in the world fighting to marry her. Su Qingchen's words were very gentle and polite, but in Dongfang Hui's ears, they were very harsh. What Su Qingchen meant was that since Dongfang Yu was born in the Boundless Mountain, she did not need to care about her reputation at all. Not to mention that she only had a rumor with someone. Even if something really happened, there was no need to worry about no one wanting to marry her. But the Su family was an exception. The daughter-in-law of the Su family did not need to have any ability or background. She only needed a clean reputation and a virtuous character. But Dongfang Yu did not have either of these. No matter how good Dongfang Hui's temper was, she was still angered by Emo Xiuyao's words to the point that her heart secretly ached. At the same time, she also discovered that this seemingly gentle and refined immortal young master did not have a good impression of the Boundless Mountain, even vaguely showing some hostility. Compared to Prince Ding's indifference and Princess Ding's tactful rejection, this young Master Qingchen was the one who truly hated the Boundless Mountain. Dongfang Hui was a little unsure whether Su Qingchen's attitude towards the Boundless Mountain was because of Dongfang Yu's incessant pestering these past few days. But logically speaking, with the personalities of the Su family, even if they were dissatisfied with Dongfang Yu's pestering, they would not express such direct hatred and hostility. Frowning, Dongfang Hui secretly felt that she might have been a little too anxious. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.